Let's call the Concord School Committee meeting to order.
And I'd like to call the Regional School Committee to order and note that we are actually going into executive session. I need a motion. And we're being recorded and I need a motion to...
Go to executive session for purposes of...
Here. I will move for both committees that we enter into executive session under purpose 2 of the open meeting law to discuss strategy and preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel and to return to open session at approximately 5:15 p.m.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
By roll call.
Stewart, aye. Oh, that's right. Roll call
Leroy.
Booth, aye.
for both.
For both, thank you.
About aye for both.
I voted Stewart aye again.
Grom, aye for both.
White aye for both.
Johnston, aye for both.
All right, let's call the Concord School Committee that meeting back to order.
Calling the Regional School Committee back to order and note that we're being recorded. Public comment is first on the agenda. Any public comments? No public comments. And next, issues for discussion. The legal counsel RFP.
That's actually not the agenda. The agendas are outside.
They were all on.
It's up on the screen. This is not online, so.
I want to mention we have a new network, so that's why we can't get our... What were we supposed to do? We ate up the copies that they...
I think it was guest.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not in. I just figured I was going to use
If you
this.
have...
Can I just say this so everybody's got the same information?
Yes.
So we changed the networks over the last week as the summer wound down. So the plan would be for you to sign in under CPS guest. It will prompt you to create an account and put your email or cell phone number in, and supposedly it should text you or email you a code. We are finding that if you have a Gmail account, there's a glitch and it's not sending the codes. So that's why the school committee has hard copy
It
packets.
does send the code, but then you can't get on.
Can't get online.
So anyway,
Can't get out to the internet.
The Gmail, you can't get on.
So
If
something-
you have something other than Gmail, you can't.
glitchy going on
the
there.
code.
We haven't all figured it out yet.
I tried share, if like
That's been
somebody
my
gets the code. can we share
experience.
the
I was on the network,
Yeah,
but I wasn't able to get to the internet.
okay. So we have kinks to work out.
Yeah. We think now you can get on the internet. The only problem is this, again, Gmail. Everything else you should be able to get on.
I
We
can
think. And Joanne was able to.
Okay. So as school committee members, you do all have hard copies of everything, but if you want to take a minute and see how far you can get, we could do that, I would think, because eventually you got to do it, so.
I can try again, I don't know if it's worth it.
check it right now.
Okay. Are you Gmail?
The good news is we have a secure network for the first time in a long time, so
So that's
big progress.
Okay, sorry, we're all here looking at our phones now, trying to
I
see if
know.
we got our passwords. Okay, well, paper will work for now.
You do have it.
Don't we have a more secure network?
Yes, that's
This is a
correct, more secure.
network.
Yep, more secure.
Semantics.
I got this. Okay. Should we start up anyway?
Oh, I was waiting for other people, I'm in.
Oh, you are, okay. All set?
No, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the first agenda item under issues for discussion is the legal counsel RFP recommendation.
Sorry, I'm distracted likewise, but it worked for Gmail, so.
Oh,
Now,
good.
if somebody wants these copies, do people want any copies of this? All right. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, that's all right.
Technical
That's right. Yeah, I know it is.
For every access, you guys will keep something.
Okay.
It's meant for true guests. Not
Yeah.
all of you. We may talk on
Yeah, let's
whether you're really guests or not. I think that's the discussion.
Yeah, that's right.
means every time.
Because it will log you out. We purposely are logging guests out, but not
Oh.
for 24 hours. So 48 hours.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be better not to
That
be
was-
logged out every time we leave the
Okay.
building.
Just get an iPad.
Right.
So Wally and Heather have been discussing this issue for several weeks, along with Lori Hunter, and we look forward to your assessment.
Do you want to?
Sure, I'll start it. Just to be clear that there's no attachment online, there's a hard copy that everybody should have in the room at this point, so I can talk you through what's here. It came as a separate single hard copy just now, so it's not in the packet. So the first piece I'm wanting to share out is the summary of the process and how we got to what we're going to talk on tonight. The RFP, as you're well aware, went out by both invitation and was posted publicly. We had 6 responses, 5 of those through invitation and 1 to the public response. Following that, I conducted phone interviews and reference checks with the firms that were not already known quantities to the school district. From there, we narrowed to 4 firms. In that pool were both of our current firms, the Special Ed Council as well as our Labor Council. Face-to-face interviews were connected a few weeks ago. Wally and Heather joined me with 3 firms that we needed more time with to get to know them and the attorneys that would likely be our lead attorneys and understand their scope of work. And following that, we've debriefed and done the vetting of the pros and cons, and I think are ready tonight to give you a recommendation, and that's the discussion. So a few of the topics that emerged, and Heather and I should join in at any point. All of the firms were highly qualified and serving similar districts demographically to ours to varying degrees. These firms were also of different sizes, so that makes some logical sense. Like I said, we had first-hand experience, either myself or the district per se, with 3 out of the 4 firms. Current Labor Council's hourly rates, as you know, are $7.20 to $11.20, depending on which attorneys we're working with. All of the other 3 firms averaged an hourly rate somewhere between $200 and $250 an hour, so at an average of $230-ish per hour. We talked transitions with all of them if we were to move from our current supports, and I think Heather and Wally can weigh in. Similar responses, so process is definitely in place that in terms of how they would approach that and getting to know what needed to be done here. Special education services are available in 3 out of the 4 firms. Obviously included in that is our current Special Education Council. As we spent the time with these folks, I think, and again, I hope they'll weigh in, but we started to see the benefit potential to having the firm do both special ed and labor. And 2 of those firms came as a team, so we were able to see the teams simultaneously. And I think it did, I'll speak for you, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we saw that that seemed beneficial just in the way they were able to share how they had supported other districts and navigated other situations.
Can I just add?
Please, yes.
On that specific topic, as we talked about how to go about these interviews, we did discuss that, we would look at these as potentially 2 separate firms doing 2 separate things. So, we really, in fact, I think we went into it with almost thinking maybe there's a bias that way. So it was interesting as we talked to folks that there did seem to be some benefit to the symbiosis of having all of that service provided by one firm.
I agree. In fact, I think Lori's term of the team coming in kind of captures it, because I feel like that's the value that shown through is the possibility of looking at all issues with this team approach, the way that they can really work together. And that really did come through in these discussions.
So, can I ask a question? So, because I don't know enough about how they operate, but typically within a firm there are attorneys that are specialized in special ed, and then others that specialize in the labor services. Okay.
Typically, although one of the firms, the lead attorney that met with us said she does both for some districts. So,
and when you say labor services, is that contract negotiations?
Yes.
As well as like HR issues they might have? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm glad to clarify. I just needed a verb.
Okay.
an adjective to describe it that captured it all in a succinct way.
I mean, it seems like the labor piece really sort of, I mean, if you think of what Ropes and Gray's been doing for us,
Yes, that's my equivalent of,
so, that we get into policy stuff, we get into, so it's sort of, there's
Like
special
everything
ed, and then there's all.
It's everything
I was
else.
gonna say, as we discussed it, I kept terming it everything else, which wasn't the most descriptive term.
The only other piece that seems to get separated out is procurement,
yeah.
which, maybe when we start talking about building issues and expenses on either maintenance or construction. But most of these firms have somebody in-house who does that. We also have somebody we've been working with a long time on that stuff. And so we may, I think that piece is still sort of not necessarily nailed down by this. Gives us an option.
We sidetracked you, Lori.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's a conversation. And really the last point in terms of themes that emerged, one particular firm, and it does correlate with the recommendation, had extensive experience in the educator evaluation system and spoke to that extensively. On the special education side, are looking at issues from the state and national level, representing the Association of Special Ed Directors and even beyond up at the legislative level in Washington, doing some work there. So I think that was some of what made them stand out to us, aside from the competence that was being portrayed otherwise. So
Definitely. I would just say to give a little more background to that on the educator evaluation piece, I even felt like it was more than just the specifically evaluation process itself, which clearly they're very well versed in, but also not only a deep knowledge of that, but an attitude of looking at everything in terms of let's look at how we're doing things to avoid problems in the future, and really just that perspective of doing things a certain way, doing things right as we go along to avoid problems, as opposed to just responding to problems. So that's good. Certainly stood out to us.
And along that line, it seemed like rather than just sort of immediately, okay, we're going to, we've got two sides on this issue and we're going to fight it out. It was much more of a, from the get-go, at the first instance of any trouble, let's try to problem solve this thing so that it doesn't become a big issue, which is good for morale and it's probably also good for the bottom line.
They just seemed to know education and teachers and the perspectives very well.
A couple of them at least, were educationally focused completely, including the one that's a recommendation.
Can you just talk a little about some of that experience that because you guys interviewed, you heard them. Part of it's obviously also a connection with the people that we're talking, or that you were with, but a little bit just about that experience with schools, that you felt like, that resonated with you, some of their experiences, if you remember.
The ones, so with our recommendation with I think the stories in particular did center around the evaluation system,
Okay.
Or the evaluation process, really. And she talked about, working with teachers and staff early on in terms of how are we going to best implement this process so that it works well for everyone. It almost seemed non-legal in the sense that it had nothing to do with conflict and legal problems later. It was all about, let's make sure we implement this system in a way that really works well. And then, by the way, that also protects you legally. So that...
Was there any, so beyond that, because I heard that from
I think what you were asking was other districts they work with.
or like, for example, negotiations were coming up, a negotiation year, or that kind of experience.
Yes,
do you wanna-
the labor attorney has had extensive experience with negotiations. I'm trying to think, has she done an IBB or not?
No, but she's high
She's skilled in it.
She's aware for sure. Typically, you don't have attorneys at IBB, so it's much more being aware. She did talk about having various interest-based bargaining.
Thank you.
If she had, different experiences that depending on the district and what you were hoping for in terms of process. It could be more IBB in nature, where it's got some of those interests being talked about, or traditional, and the role of the attorney could be at the table, directing and, you know, immediately communicating, or more consulting, and the committee or administration's at the table. But
So they've done it a number of ways.
oh, she's
She's done it a number of ways.
in fact, she
I-
couldn't come tonight to meet you all because she's negotiating a contract. so.
But that's true. I particularly like, as we were talking about the concept of negotiation, that her take on it was, well, let's just sit and talk about what would make sense the most. There was no assumption that she would be at the table or not, or that it would be done this way or that way. It was, there's so many ways that we can do this. You know, we'll sit down and figure out what makes most sense for your district, which I think is just a very broad-minded way of looking at it, and I liked.
And are there other schools, like schools that we know that have used
There
this?
was, every one of these had, we probably should have brought that list, I don't have it with me, but everyone indicated the districts they work with, and they all had like districts. I think the firm that probably had the most in this area was the firm that one person came from. You know, towns that are right around us, but not necessarily dealing with the same things we're dealing with.
And I think something that changed for me as the process went on, I have to say that I went into this thinking one thing and left completely differently in terms of a number of different things. The largest firm who serves the most number of districts like us, I think one of our concerns was, does this strong lead attorney actually have time to give to us? And I started to feel like we'd be with associates far more because she has so many similar districts.
Well, that was my
So
next question. The
that
people you
was-
were, again, the people you were talking, that you're recommending, you felt like this was, these were the people we were going to interface with
Yes.
directly. in
Very
this
good
process.
connections.
And that was one of the questions that we asked specifically was, you know, we need to talk to you, or are we going to get you on the phone?
Yeah.
And I was, you know, particularly concerned about Lori's access. And, you know, the answers were all satisfactory. Again, I felt that that MLM shone a little more there. I was a little more comfortable
Because I think that's one of the,
with the
Right,
answers.
and
what we've had.
the good, you know, the benefit here of the four firms we were talking through, or, you know, we have firsthand feedback either from my previous districts or the current councils to know how that rapport works or that accessibility works, and that certainly was you know, it's not that you base this decision on that, but you have some background information that's firsthand, so.
And this one came out high in that, on that score also.
The second bullet that says the district administration have firsthand experience with 3 of the 4 firms, is Murphy, Lemire, and Murphy one of the 3?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I wasn't clear. Okay.
Yes. It's hard to write this, you know, we're trying to.
Because I was trying to say, well, okay.
Yes, no, good question.
Basically, that's fine.
Yes, I have worked with them before, we'll be very clear about that, so. But we've
you're
worked
also
with the
trying to
other,
be-
2 of the other 3 also.
I'm sensing that you're being respectful of the others
Yes.
in this
That's
conversation,
the-
because you have one
yeah.
recommendation that.
Yeah,
Got
we
it.
decided not to divulge any of the names.
Just felt a public conversation about folks you might not be picking.
Right. That they're doing.
The question about transitions, you
Yes.
referenced that in the bullet, it was important to you.
Yes.
And the suggestion here is the transition means a new firm would need to get up to speed. Is there another kind of transition also in terms of when we move work over, or would it be moved over as a single transaction? Or would it be parceled out as this new firm, in our estimation, was ready to pick it up?
We
Well, there might be pending work that we would want to leave right
We
where it is.
talked about that some, and my recommendation would be that we let central administration decide which items are sort of close enough to fruition that we just leave it where it is and not bother with the transition. If there are things that are midway through and it would benefit, then we should make the change now based on an understanding that that doesn't hinder our position. I think probably the more challenge, the as what we're calling labor side of things probably isn't as challenging on a transitional front as the special ed stuff, because much more of that is ongoing and will continue to, you got to transition it at some point, so you're probably going to have to do that all in a fairly short window, but
Good.
that was my interpretation.
More than sensible.
Any other questions?
Another thing to add, just we did several times discuss as we were looking at these, that our current council has given us incredible support for many years. And that, I think really if it weren't for the difference in numbers here, obviously we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion, as we've all said, but I think we acknowledged it several times, and I just want to acknowledge publicly also that they've given us terrific support. And this recommendation is primarily based on the fact that we did this because of numbers and the pricing, the hourly rates coming in. And I think we all, at least the three of us, feel very good about this recommendation. But I don't want it to take away from what Robertson Gray has done for us, because they've done a lot and we feel like they've given us good support.
I would echo that. I don't think it's because of the service they gave us. I think it's economics.
Yep.
Thanks, you guys. So my only last comment, we put it on for a vote. That's up to you if you're comfortable voting it. I don't want to tell you one way or the other to decide that. There's a benefit to not waiting until September 25th when we meet again as a joint group. But if you need time to think, and obviously that's understandable if that's the case, and we can wait the month.
So how would that play out, the September 25th, with all these firms waiting?
And they've been waiting a while now,
Yeah.
I would say. I would have to keep them apprised of where we were at. So I owe them that even now, so I was waiting for tonight to get back to them and give them a status. So, yes.
I guess I would only say on that decision of voting or not tonight, if people are uncomfortable voting and there's some specific, further information that you would want, I think it would be helpful to know what that would be. Minus that, if there wasn't something specific, there's definitely an advantage to voting tonight and starting that transition so that we can kind of line up the transition with the new school year.
Yeah. And the other piece to the transition, there's a lot less active issues the second day of school than there will be September 25th.
Right.
So I'd say, there's a benefit to the transition if we get it on this end of the
If
school
we
year.
can do it tonight.
But if you need more time or have questions, that's important. So.
I think we can have some confidence in, one, you've done your due diligence here, two, that you have some prior experience with these firms, three, that they have other district performance for us to look at. Those are three pretty compelling reasons to give us confidence.
Yeah, I think your process, I think the combined invitations in public actually proved to be a really healthy process. And some of what you're talking about now fleshed out because of how that happened, and then as we did the next layer of work. Like I said, I haven't had a place where I went in thinking one thing and landed totally differently in a long time. And the process worked, so it turned us to a different direction. Yeah.
I would also just say on the process from my perspective, I feel, I don't know if we said it clearly, but having gone through these 3 interviews and talked to them, I feel very comfortable and feel strongly about this recommendation. It's a very good one. So I'm wholeheartedly behind it.
Yeah. It's good that all three of you feel basically the same way.
Yeah,
That's comforting.
Came to that same conclusion.
Right. Okay, anything else on this one? So next item is a presentation by ClearGov. I was at one of those presentations that...
What would we decide? We would vote on it later.
It's on for an action.
It's on later.
Yeah.
I was at a presentation of ClearGov a few months ago. The town of Concord, I believe, has signed a contract with this company, and it allows, in simple terms, much better benchmarking of services and the comparison to other towns that now exists. So the town clearly felt the cost was warranted, and there is a other component that covers the school districts. And that's, of course, why we have an interest in taking a closer look at this.
The site's locked.
No, I can't.
I mean, I'm.
No, I couldn't even get.
I've
Oh,
connected.
that's right,
I was gonna say, the first thing I tried didn't work, but the first thing I tried was the ClearGov.
No, I think, but Lori,
Use the webpage, and I could actually log in here as well.
I think we're blocking their website. No, she's got it.
He's going to log in on our computer and that will take care of it.
I can't get to my agenda.
Okay, great, thank you.
Of course it's right. I'm waiting for it since you're not facing right at the camera.
See, that's it. No, no.
I can't even get to, I don't want to get down to, this is on the list.
No.
So I can't get an agenda on that. Still with it?
Well, I have mine here.
Yeah, well, I have,
Oh, you got,
I can't, this is, it's messed up. I can't get to,
Like
like
the
the school committee, that's what it's like every time I do it.
I know. It's gonna be a wild ride.
That's why it doesn't go through, so it's just not,
Something's wrong, yeah.
sorry, I can't get an electronic agenda, that's all.
you know.
Barbara, you ready? He's all setting expectations.
Okay, great.
Great. Well, first off, I want to say thank you to everyone for allowing me to come here today and show you a little bit about what ClearGov has to offer. It seems like some of you are familiar. I know in the back-end console, we actually have a few of you who have user accounts, so you've probably seen some of the back-end. But really what we're looking at here is a public-facing transparency profile. It's really meant to allow you to tell the full story of your organization so that really everyone can go through, see anything from public finances, test scores, and then of course a district snapshot. Now, if at any point you have questions, my name is Louis Alfano. I'd be more than happy to pause and answer those questions for you, or if at the end you have them, we can stop at that point as well. But really what we're looking at here, this portion is the actual transparency profile, and I've done a little bit here to make this a little more interactive. We do have our basic version that's live, and I've actually gone ahead and upgraded just so you can see some of the dynamic drill down capabilities. Really what we're looking at, and I will drill into some of this, is a dynamic snapshot of your district. So being able to see the student body, the employee base, financial overview broken out pretty plainly. Scrolling down here, capital outlay.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
And you might have said this as I was trying to find this. Where do you get your information?
Sure, so we're getting this information directly from Desi.
Desi.
With that in mind, if this were a service that you wanted to sign on for, we would certainly work with you to get more and more recent and updated information. With that in mind, the onus is on us. This is a turnkey solution. This is something that we put a lot of time and effort into updating, mapping, especially when it gets into, for example, the budget. Because I'm sure you don't want to spend time, uploading this information and, making sure it's mapped accurately. So really, what you're able to do is send that right over to us. We would upload this information, and what that's going to allow really any parent, citizen to do, as this is public-facing, is access ClearGov, either via the website or a link that we can create for you folks that you can put right on your website. Drill into really any level of detail that they'd like. So here, we're just looking at the expenditures. We see what that total is. We can see that broken out pretty plainly in a pie chart here. If I wanted to change that, I myself prefer bar charts. We could go ahead and do that. And then really just drilling into any piece of this budget. This is expenditures, revenues, really anything that you are posting here. And one of the great features of this platform is the benchmarking capability. The ability to not only post your numbers, but compare to similar districts. So what I've done is I've actually gone in and I have created what I call a demo peer group. I went in and really created a peer group that's going to be other districts that are similar in terms of K through 8, in terms of size, budget, student base, things of that nature. So
we would create that peer group ourselves?
You can create those yourselves. You can also enlist our help. I will show you, it's very easy to create these peer groups, especially because I'm sure you folks know who those other districts are. It's just a matter of dragging and dropping them into the list. But here I've just created a list, so every step along the way, you're actually able to see how your district compares to other similar districts nearby. Now again, this is a mock-up. You might want to use this group. You might want to subtract from this group. I know I put Northborough and Southborough in there a little bit further away, but still, you're able to really make those accurate comparisons, which gives you and your parents sort of a point of emphasis or a point of context. So you can see, okay, this is what we're spending on operations. Is that a lot? Is that a little? So it really gives you that means to determine that information. Now, there are a few other features. I'll be brief here. I know I only have a few more minutes. But really, just anything you see, you can drill into. Being able to look at, student breakdowns, looking at the student body, enrollment by grade, and these are dynamic grids. High needs students, breaking that out, economically disadvantaged, ELL students, IEP students, being able to broadcast all of this information, making it readily available and very understandable, and stacking that up again through that benchmarking against other similar districts. As we scroll down here, you see really how many ways we're able to break up this information, convey this information, so that really anyone can understand this and get a better sense of your district. Now, the other thing that I'd like to show here is the back-end administrative console. This is something that isn't on the public-facing side. This is more so for internal use, for your benchmarking, being able to really make comparisons and make decisions based off of one single set of data. Really what you can do here, you can create peer groups. This is a very easy process of going through. I'll actually edit, but if we were creating, we could just search for any other school district, pull that right over through drag and drop. We also have the ability to benchmark on the fly, and one of our strongest tools here is our chart builder. This is a great way to use a peer group that you've already created, so for example, our demo group, and it's going to pull the data from those other communities on the fly, bring it into a very easy to use chart, and I'll show the values, I'll show the labels. You're always going to be here in red, drawing the eye, and really this is a dynamic way of looking at any portion of your revenues, your budgets, and being able to make those quick comparisons. As you see here, I can click through. This is a dynamic graph, so it's going to change on the fly and really allow you to look at any portion of the budget, see what other similar communities are doing, and then use that information as you see fit. So I want to open it up. I know that I've talked quite a bit here. I'm curious to see, if there are any questions, if there are any things you folks would like me to go into a little bit more detail on.
So, maybe this is a question for you. The data comes from DESE, and DESE has sort of this standard, like if we pick a bunch of schools to benchmark, how can we be sure that's valid? Like they've submitted this year's data, or it's apples to apples, all of that.
Sure. So,
Yeah, I mean that's a vagary of the system.
Because we all supply DESE with this information, but is it true? Like it's one town says it this way and one town says this. Okay. I don't want to blow it all out of the water. I just want to understand.
No, there can be those variables.
Okay.
I think no matter what, if there's one thing we learned in the benchmarking work we did last year, there's always context to every set of numbers.
Right.
So I think what's beneficial here is the other thing we learned last year, all the manual attempts to gather the numbers together gets pretty messy and hard to present, and the discussions are great, but actually having a product to share can be challenging, so this would give us some options there, I would think.
Sorry, can I just follow up on Mary's question? Because I had almost the same question, but to follow it a step deeper, and this might be hard to answer because neither of you were actually here when this was happening, but I remember a couple of years ago, several times people asking questions about the budget and DESI categories, and the answer often being, well, our categories are different from DESI. And so I'm getting at the same point, but I'm trying to understand better. If we, if we were to give you our information differently, does that change things, or are the categories all always
DESI
going to be
does
different?
prescribe how we are supposed to report things.
Okay.
That's all I can, I wasn't here, so.
Right,
I can't
exactly, I
answer.
know, okay.
But-
So, okay.
Translation and execution are different topics, I
Right.
think. But they define everything, and it is meant to standardize it.
Okay. So as long as we're reporting according to those, and other people
You know,
generally are, I don't think
those are things we're looking at right now, as to
Okay.
whether we have alignment to do or not. So.
And so you would make decisions based on some of, I mean, you qualify data if you saw outliers, but you would, I'm just, like, what kinds of decisions might you make?
So, I think I've used this in my other district. So, I think in terms of budgeting and information for the community, it's incredibly valuable that while it's often may have some qualifiers to it, to have some things at your fingertips, you end up talking about the data rather than gathering the data,
Yeah.
which we definitely proved is a challenge.
More making the case.
Correct.
As opposed to making a decision,
That's right.
would you look at per pupil spending?
Well, so
on
it,
X, Y, Z?
different district, different conversation, but we used it very effectively to show that the bang for the buck was enormous for what the per pupil spending was. The outcomes were on par with the high performing districts. The per pupil spending was on the middle range. And that was a really effective. In fact, my superintendent at the time used snapshots of ClearGov in his town meeting presentation. So it's all how you use it. I think that's the bottom line here. It can also be a great communicator for the community. It's a very user-friendly interface, as you can see. One question I have for you, and because I know somebody's going to ask it, is there a way to do any compiling of the K-8 and 9-12 pieces so we get some benefit to compare ourselves with K-12 districts?
So in terms of creating a group of, you folks versus, the other Ks.
So if I want to compare us to Lexington, a K-12 district, right now our data is in two separate places. So is
Right.
ClearGov have any metrics that allow us to aggregate?
At this point, no.
Okay.
That is certainly something I can bring back, see,
Yeah.
what the best
It's a
course of
unique
action on our end.
request, but it's one of our ongoing discussions, that it's hard for us to compare it to so many of the K-12 districts because our data's in two places.
Right. And my only immediate thought, and I can certainly take that back to my development team, see what the best practice would be. But my thought is, because we do have such flexible peer groups and the ability to create those, you could pull in, essentially your data would be there. You could pull in, the high school information as well. So it's all in one graph. It's still two
Okay.
separate data points, but it would make it a little bit easier to at least
Yeah.
consolidate that in the meantime.
Okay.
But again, I can certainly go back and kind of see what our best practice
Yeah,
would be.
okay, thank you.
So
Yes.
this thing has a certain value as an interpretive tool for decision-making, but it also has an outward-facing tool for the community at large.
Exactly.
Who sees what if we are a subscriber, and who sees what if we are not a subscriber vis-a-vis Concord and Concord-Carlisle? Meaning, is the Concord and Concord-Carlisle data accessible to people generally, but we just lose the analytical tool capacity of this? Is that how it works?
So essentially how this page would look as a subscriber versus non. And let me pull up. What I can show you, and I always am a sucker to pull up my hometown's data. Harvard Public Schools, we're actually in communications with them. I prettied up the page a little bit here, but really what you would see as a non-subscriber is the surface level information without a breakdown. So without the subscription, you could still see, or I should say the general public could still see this main page. They wouldn't be able to drill down further.
I understand.
Whereas on your page, where I have it now, and I'll just go quickly, I've upgraded this so that really anything you see where it says view breakdown, you can select into. Really this provides a deeper drill down, deeper dive into the information, and of course, more explanation there.
We could,
Otherwise
can
it
do
stops
that.
at the top.
Exactly.
Okay.
but we can do that for any school, not just ours because we're subscribed.
Right, so taking a look at, really any school in the state, we are in a few other states as well. Really anyone can search just as I was right from here, search around and see those different profiles.
So just to double check that, so if we were a subscriber, we could drill down into Harvard's data even if Harvard couldn't, if they, as a non-subscriber. Is that what you meant?
So now I see what you're asking. As a subscriber, and I'll say this from two different viewpoints. From the viewpoint of citizens, parents, what have you, whoever's looking at these pages, they're going to see the data as it's presented from that community. So if that community is not a subscriber, it's going to be that surface level. That being said, as a subscriber, you have access to their information within the benchmarking piece. So you would have access to more detailed information, more drill down information through the benchmarking back end.
So by pulling it into yours, in a sense?
Exactly.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Yep.
And how does it differ what we can see as a subscriber? We would have login info or something versus a Concord resident who's not going to log in. And I think you touched on this, but I'm just to review. What's the difference between what we, the school committee, can see versus what parents visiting the site
Sure,
can see?
great. So that's a great question. I think I might have confused the issue a little bit. So regardless of, right here, I'm logged in as an admin just because I want to be able to see the back end.
Right.
This is really the sole difference.
Okay.
Yes, a Concord resident would be able to see everything, have the drill down on that front end.
Got
The
it.
difference is, as an administrator or as someone who can log in, you can actually go in the background, benchmark, run these additional reports, whereas your residents are going to be able to see this and everything on this main page.
When you say Concord residents, have we given them an ID, or this is just a person on the
Really, no,
street?
it's not Concord
Anybody.
residents. It's anyone who comes to the site to learn.
Yes, and it could
Okay.
be prospective residents, it could be anyone who just types in Concord.
Well, I can go look at Harvard today, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
that's-
And if you wanted to, and maybe I'll, help out by logging out here. So Concord Public Schools, I'm logged out. I don't have any credentials in there. I'm still able to see the same thing.
And so if we subscribe to this, the town, what?
So the town has subscribed, so the town, he hasn't shown you there's a municipal side. So their data now has the depth to it that he talked about, and they obviously have the back end side access. So this would be the complement to that if we had the school data further available than just that high level view.
Yes, and I just pulled up, just for reference, the town of Concord and their page. Again, not logged in, just able to see their information. Again, similar look and feel. They have the demographic snapshot, financial overview, revenues versus expenses dating back to 2011. They do have an education snapshot showing where school-age children are going. Debt-specific information, so it's a little bit of a different feel than what we saw on the school side, but again, that was intentional because we do want to focus more in on those issues that are more important to you folks as a district, as opposed to what was more important to the town.
So, just to tell a little about that, who can view what? If we subscribe, anybody will be able to see this level of detail
Yes.
on your site, just by going to the site.
Yes.
Versus if we don't, then all you see is that higher level stuff.
Exactly.
Lori mentioned the combined piece. We did a pretty extensive dive into how to deal with that because it's been a nagging issue for us. There's a couple of people in the audience who were participants in that. And it's non-trivial to basically create a view of our district that is K-12 that then allows us to look at Lexington or Wellesley or Belmont as a benchmark. Because otherwise the data, if you look at it individually, our K-8 and Carlisle's K-8 and our high school, you don't learn much. So we came up with a way to compile our data in a way that gives us a K-8 view across the two towns, K-8s and the high school. Now, interestingly, in the state, one of the perennial highest ranking districts is not unlike ours in Dover-Sherburne. So we also have done the same thing for their district. And in a way that, when we start to actually go talk to our finance committee about benchmarking, that's the only way the numbers are really of value. These are nice. They could see, in a presentation to town meeting on the Concord budget or the regional budget, the graphs are all going to look the same as the towns. People will get used to them. They'll be easier to read and understand. But from a benchmarking standpoint, it's a deficit for a regional and non-regional district like ourselves. It would be really interesting to me, and I know others, to understand if you can do something about this on the back end.
Okay.
To replicate something similar to what we've done, and we can share that with you.
Sure.
At the very least, the ability to extract data from this, rather than having to go to DESI and other state sites to pull data to bring into our benchmarking algorithm, would be beneficial. Can we extract data from this?
Yes, and just to show you how, I will log in one more time.
Excuse me, do you have pricing on this?
I do. Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, I'm just kind of struck, like,
Yeah, it's a
where we're trying to get
$1,500
here,
and
so.
correct me if I misspeak, $1,500 startup fee and $4,600 annually.
So let me just,
You're given some pricing to carry it. at town
right,
hall.
I brought up a spreadsheet. It's
Finish
on-
what you're doing. I know that's close enough.
I was just
Right.
looking for a yes or no.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it's an important piece of the discussion, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So to answer your question in terms of pulling data from this so that you don't have to go through, find that data yourself, the short answer is yes. With any of our benchmarking, if you wanted to go through, maybe you are selecting certain metrics that you're looking for. So essentially you're saying we want, these parts of the revenues from other similar communities, we want these parts of the expenditures. All you need to do is just select really any of the fields that you're looking into. This can be drilled down into greater detail, but for the sake of the demonstration, I'll just go through fairly quickly. What you can do here is this is just a great way of pulling in similar communities, providing metrics to the system, really just kind of picking who it makes sense to benchmark against. And again, for the sake of the demonstration, I'll just take a look at total enrollment and radius. We have 35 matches. Let me make that a little larger here. And when you pull this data, when you pull these data sources, this is pulling directly from our database, all of that information coming from DESI. There's a very easy export to Excel function. So what you can do is just download all of this data. You don't need to go looking for disparate sources of information. It's all right here for you, and then Excel is obviously very tailorable. You can manipulate that information, change around the columns, things of that nature, and use it for your purposes.
So I think what I saw when you were going through that, when you drilled down into another level of detail, and you guys may remember this, DESI has a new tool called Radar, which we utilized, but it doesn't give you the ability to pull all of the data in all its granularity that exists in the database that you can get access to. It looks like you've got access to all of that, and you have gone that extra step
Yes,
to allow us to be able to see that data, and then we can extract it.
exactly, yes.
That was a problem, right, for us? That alone might be worth the $4,600. So that's a level of detail that's really valuable, and Desi doesn't appear to be interested in doing.
Sure.
So that's a good tool.
Another question. I think I know the answer to this, given that the whole point is standardization. But one of the discussions that we've had in the past that's a challenge is the fact that when you're looking at benchmarking and success metrics, for us, a lot of what we do, the success metrics can be different sometimes, right? They're unique. It's not all about test scores. It's about experiences. We have all that. So are there places in here to kind of plug in other types of success metrics? Or does that defeat the purpose because the goal is standardization?
So the short answer is yes and no. The reason I say that is in terms of the graphs, those are all standard. Those are all going to remain standard amongst different profiles. That being said, every step along the way, any graph you see, there is the ability to add context, and one of those ways that you can add context is through essentially, text bubbles, boxes, and that's something a lot of folks have played around with, adding a user picture, a name, something like that, so it's coming from a source, where you can essentially add your take, tell the full story, really flesh out the data a little bit more, because sometimes, data points are great, but they don't tell the entire story, so we do provide you the option to, go in and put a blurb of, additional information.
Add some context. So on a page that then is public that everybody can see, we could add context to whatever it is.
So,
Can I ask one last question
go ahead.
while we're on this? Can you import data so we can extract data to Excel? If we had a spreadsheet that basically was compiled of the data that came out of your system, but they were small, we're not talking big algorithms, math. Can we put that data back into the system to create graphs and charts and tables in the same format that we'd be extracting if we were creating a report?
So let me make sure that I understand. You've taken the data right from the system, changed it in some way, altered it in some way. You want to upload that back in order to make the graphs that you see here. Essentially, as of right now, because this is a turnkey solution, it's something that we want to keep as easy to use as possible. We don't have a method for end users to upload information back into the system. That being said, we're happy to upload information, map it in as frequently as possible. So if there are new figures that you want us to upload into the page, we would be more than happy to do that. Our data team works pretty quickly to upload that information. Then it exists in the platform, and you could use the same tools that you used to make those graphs in the first place.
Could we create another district?
Create another district as in another page.
Make believe?
Are you trying to buy it?
While you'd like to meet with your development team.
It's,
We have a lot of ideas.
all we're doing is we're pulling the data out. We're doing some ratios to calculate the number of students versus the figures in each column. And then, and then we've got a new set of data that is the three districts rolled up into one.
Sure, I see.
We could put that back in as a district, and then somebody could look at it and see what that is in total.
So to my knowledge, we would be able to take that data and upload it, update it into the system. That's what we convey on your page. In terms of creating a brand new district, that's not something that I believe that we do at this date and time.
Worth a try.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea.
So Lori, we get a free trial?
Yeah, you have accounts that they could access for a week, I think you
Yes,
said?
yes.
So you could send us that login information?
Absolutely.
Because so we should decide what week we want this, maybe this evening?
That would probably be helpful, so you can all
Any
know
idea
you have
what,
time to get in
what
while
week?
that logins are active.
Probably at some point before our next meeting, I would guess, but.
I mean, second week in September, first week in September? Second probably better.
So Lori, how would you
Long
use this?
weekend.
You know, we're whispering about all the ways we'd use it while we sit here, so there's a lot of tools here that,
And this is a huge time savings for them.
I think there's a lot of ways we could use it. Just even glancing quickly when we were on the educational side, I know we're fairly focused on the money part right now, but just have the educational data to just see the ethnic breakdown in such a clean, user-friendly format grabbed my attention right away. So I think there's lots of uses, both fiscally and educationally, to help us just know history, know how we're operating right now, be able to do some work on how other districts look. I think there's a lot of tools here.
That's good to know. So you're saying it would be not just on the fiscal side, even just in terms of
Yeah.
educational operations, and
Correct.
making a better experience for
Correct.
students.
You know, we're having this huge cultural competency conversation.
Right.
There's our ethnic breakdown in this really
Right
pretty
there.
graph. I mean, I think there's benefits.
All right, what would you say or anyone would say would be the shortcomings? What are
The
the
biggest
risks?
concern I always have on this is that the public gets access to data without the context.
Yeah.
And there's always hope that there's going to be explanation, but there's going to be decisions made based on just that data. And
There will be
it's
some
not that that's not
misunderstanding.
happening in other places, it definitely is. But that's always my concern.
Yeah, that was
Gets
mine as
To
well.
some
judged
extent, it's
in
already
one
happening.
spot. Yeah.
So although it seems that if we use this for a week, then we're going to have some much more intelligent questions and maybe schedule another discussion about this. So would, for instance, the weeks starting Sunday the 9th, would that work for most people?
Do they all have to be synced up on the same week, or can they individually log in and then it stays on for 7
I
days?
can set them up, you know,
Okay.
if
Oh,
everyone
okay.
wants to send me a week that works best for them, I don't mind.
Why don't we do
setting
that? And you don't have to settle on a
Okay.
specific 7
What's your
days.
email address?
Mine, so it is LALF, and that's F as in Frank, ANO, @cleargov.com.
Can you say it again? Sorry.
Yes.
I came late.
So LALF, ANO, @cleargov.com.
I'd like to ask
I have
that the members of our benchmark subcommittee, that included some FinCom members, could have access to it as well.
Good idea.
Sure. All I need in order to set up the trials.
Anyone else you'd like to have access to it?
We'll think about that.
Yeah,
I
so-
have his email, so.
All I would need are, you know, the emails of whoever wants to have a trial. I would go ahead and set you each up, and you would get an automated email from the system, just prompting you to set up a password.
Great.
Great.
Okay.
Can I just ask a technical question?
Sure.
Have you
Why
built
don't-
your
why don't
own
we-
charting tool?
just so he doesn't
Or is
get
there an
started.
underlying BI tool for this? Or is it your own?
So this is something that we do have developers on staff. This is something that we created kind of from the ground up. So it's something that, to my knowledge, is our own concoction.
So we heard some numbers. Were those Concord numbers, Concord and Concord-Carlisle numbers for pricing? And is there any incentive to bundle this? I think there's an advantage that the town is already using it, but I'm
So
wondering.
my understanding was you've already considered the bundling with the town. The fact that they've already signed on gets us a little bit of a discount.
Yes, so I actually created, you know, a quote here. Unfortunately, I can't project it, but I
Yeah,
can read it
sorry.
off to you. You will get it's a standard 15% affiliate discount because the town is already signed on. That affiliate discount continues so long as both parties are on board. So, you know, this year you would get it immediately. Next year, you know, it's both are signed on and you both receive the 15. What we'd be looking at in terms of a total cost, it is that that onboarding fee of $1,200, the annual fee of $5,500, but then taking the 15% off, we're looking at $56.95. And I can email that over as well, and you can.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And is that for both districts? We have 2 districts here, Concord Public Schools and Concord-Carlisle Regional School District. So is that for?
So that is the quote for Concord Public Schools.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't talked to Carlisle yet. Do a separate conversation.
Yeah, well, there should be a conversation about Carlisle with this. I mean, if it's another different bundle, that does Carlisle want these stats as well? We can talk to,
We'll email Jim and get him in the loop, as well as Tim Goddard and Carrie.
Would that be Jim O'Shea?
yeah.
I've actually given a presentation to Jim O'Shea. Funny enough, he's my old high school principal. Yes, so I had to fight the urge to call him Principal O'Shea. But he's actually set up with a free trial now, so that makes it a little bit easier.
Great.
I won't be at the next meeting either.
Yeah. Can you just clarify, are we paying 2 subscriptions because we have 2 districts, or is it? Because that's,
what I
Yeah,
think
he
you
said that number is just CPS.
okay, so it's twice
So we have
that.
to pay twice that to have both CPS and Concord-Carlisle
I
Regional.
didn't generate a quote for Concord-Carlisle. It was my understanding that I was looking at Concord Public. What I can do is tomorrow I can have a conversation with our CEO, talk to him and see really what we can do.
Okay.
I'll generate a quote and send that over
Yeah,
as well.
twice that cost is a lot of.
Yeah, all of a sudden it becomes a different discussion.
Right.
But if we could bundle in both districts somehow, that
So
would be better.
I find this appealing on a number of levels, but the cost is not inconsiderable. Can you take 15 seconds? How do you differentiate yourself from the other folks who are in this business?
Sure, great question. So the biggest differentiator between us and really our competitors that are out there is the ease of use. You know, really this is something that is designed so that anyone can come right in here, understand the information. The benchmarking is something that not a whole lot of other folks are incorporating into their platform, because really we want this to be as easy to use with as much context as possible, so that anyone who looks at this page can really understand pretty quickly. So that's the biggest differentiator.
Okay. Good on this.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
you so much.
Thank you
presentation.
very much.
And next on our agenda is the fiscal 20 budget development process.
Oh, yeah. So do it at the top.
And I'll send you her presentation.
You're going to talk with me. Just go back and then be able to do Bob, you ready for Jared?
Yep.
Okay.
We're waiting for you. Yep.
So I'm going to be presenting a lot of material. I'm going to go fairly quickly. Feel free to ask
Absolutely.
questions. So the first thing I'm going to be presenting is the budget timeline in the task with the central office, so the departments and the principals.
Yep.
So we actually started the budget process last week at the retreat. I presented the packet to all the principals and the department chairs. We went over, the sort of the zero-based budget process, as well as the sheets that they're going to be filling out and how they're going to justify all of their costs. Today I actually had my first budget meeting, the official first one with Kristen. Thank you. So it's officially budget season in August.
All of those ones with me don't count.
Right.
So that started last April.
Thank you. Yeah, right.
So we started the budget process. It's a zero-based budget, and this list probably does look familiar. Many of these items were presented to you by Laurie last year throughout the budget process. We're going to be diving deep, obviously, into the legal, as we just did, all the salaries, all the non-salaries, other things such as copiers, just taking a look around the district, figuring out if they're in the right place, cell phones, vehicles, supplies, materials, absolutely everything. Justifying the costs, seeing what we have, are there savings, could we be doing things better? And that budget process is pretty much going to take us up till the end of September. On October 1st and October 2nd, we have the two fall town meetings. And then we start with the budget presentations. On October 9th, we'll be presenting to you all our cost drivers. And what this really is it's sort of, we're presenting sort of the guideline memo that you received from the Concord FinCom. And then on October 10th, we'll be sending our data to the Concord FinCom. On the 18th of October, we're going to be presenting the cost drivers to the FinCom. And then on the 13th, we're going to be presenting the superintendent's recommended budget to you all. On the 15th, we're going to be presenting this to the FinCom in Concord. And then some other dates here, placing ads in the newspaper, just so we know that we don't miss these deadlines. The budget hearing, then we're in the 18th of December. The school committee needs to vote the budget. Then once the school committee votes it, we'll send the assessments out. We'll have the budget book out. Our goal is January 15th. The governor's budget comes out on the 23rd. And then there's some other dates there, a public hearing, all the way down to the 2 annual town meetings. So this is a big picture of what we're doing and the timeline and the tasks.
Nice.
So just a question, I don't see Carlisle FinCom in here.
Thank you.
Obviously, we
Yep.
have.
And as I was saying that, I said that to myself, I'm going to get
No, we just don't have dates from
so I
them.
gotta
Yeah,
get
no,
the
I
dates.
Yeah.
okay, just
Yeah.
to
Concord's
clarify.
provided us schedules already, it's
Yeah.
just that
Yeah.
difference.
And I have
We
been
know
in
we're going to
contact
Concord.
with Kerry and everything about this,
Perfect.
so we will have those dates, and it will be added to this timeline.
This overview is so helpful, by the way.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
this
that is-
overview,
yeah,
like, this
very
is
good.
great
It's
to
good
see
for
the
us
whole
to
timeline.
know it too and have deadlines, so.
Yeah.
So with no further questions, I'm actually going to jump to the next sheet.
Use the arrow in the top left.
I just have one quick question about the budget hearing is at the end of November. Is that a change from what we've done in the past?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The budget hearing on the November 27th date?
That's what we did last year, and we can certainly talk about this more. Jared and I spent a long time talking about this when we built the timeline yesterday. So last year, we brought you the budget, then 2 weeks later, we did the hearing, and then the December meeting, you voted it. The public hearing has to be in there somewhere, obviously. So the question is, does it need to be a standalone? You could tag it to either of the other two meetings and have the hearing prior to one of your regular meetings. So that's up for some feedback if you've got.
So I'm just
questions.
trying to clarify, the public hearing in February is different from.
The public hearing in February is the Finance Committee's public hearing on the warrant articles for town meeting.
Okay.
The December public hearing is our public hearing on the school budgets.
Yeah.
And when have
And
we
we
had
have-
the budget books are at the public hearing?
Prior to, before that, but after we,
After
we're
you're
done after we vote the budget,
After.
which we have to do for the warrant on December 15th.
So the goal is that for the Finance Committee's public hearing, the budget books are available, I was aiming for a month prior at least, so that the community can see what you
Okay,
can.
that's what I was trying to follow.
Yeah, good question, good question.
Comment from the public. There's also a public hearing for the October 1st public meeting on
Yes.
September 12th.
Yes, thank you.
September
We knew
12th?
that, we just didn't put it on the timeline.
Uh,
Yeah, no, it should be. Thank you.
So, we have two budgets, and I think in the past, we've tended to talk about them here in our meetings together. This assumes that we'll continue that?
We are open to feedback on that. I think that's for you
In some
as a
ways, it's
committee
helpful,
to
I mean, it
talk.
just,
Yeah.
you know, it takes more time, but, so.
Sorry, ask that again, Mary, what did you say?
We would always talk about the Concord and the regional budgets together. I mean, I'm sure there were separate conversations with the Concord School Committee, but
At the budget.
Same night.
no, just in our whenever we were talking
meeting,
budgets,
yeah.
we typically covered both of them.
Got it.
I think there are issues that are overlapping, so I guess.
And there
We suck
have
it up,
been times
Buttercup.
that- yeah. And we're sorry, and we try to
No,
limit that.
it can be really helpful.
Yeah.
It's probably
Well,
more
and I-
helpful than it is a nuisance. so.
Because I know last year, at least, there were several times where we did try to put some Concord things in Concord-only meetings.
Yeah.
And I think a couple small things were, a couple discussions, we did split.
But then we
But
could
so many
talk
of them
about-
end up, right, related, that.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So I know this conversation led to some of how we've crafted this year's school committee calendar, that all the meetings in the time frame that gets passed really into the fall where the budget's being built are all joint meetings.
Okay.
Because I think there was
Because of
sense that it made sense to
Okay.
have you all here.
Okay.
And the question to have our public hearing on the budget, we could have that just before a regular school committee meeting, right?
You could, that is the regular school committee meeting on November 27th or whatever it is.
Okay, so that's
So
the
it's just
same,
a
yeah.
matter of which meeting you want to identify. It's not a separate additional meeting, it's
Yeah, we
it's
could
your
have the same
regular
night.
meeting.
Yeah.
So, wait, we've been down this road. And we had it separated out.
No, I never did.
It's always been on the,
Separate,
that I remember,
it's-
it's been on the same night as the school
Same
committee
night, but
meeting.
it's very separate from
It's a different.
School
It's
committee
before the
meeting,
meeting.
right. That's what I mean.
It has to have its own
In
time
the
frame.
past, it was during the school committee meeting and
Yeah,
for some,
you should.
Have you been, the select board does this regularly, where they'll have to have a public hearing about something.
right, I remember we, when I say we've been down this road, because someone called it out to, it needs to be separate
Yes.
from, and we did it before. I just wanna be
That's what
clear.
we did last year.
You adjourn that and then you
Yeah,
call it order.
that's what I
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
2 separate meetings on the same night.
Okay, so that'll be the 27th, is that what we're saying? It'll be 2 separate.
Was that?
It was great.
Sorry, we're jumping in after on page 2.
Great.
All you again.
All right, great.
Okay, so back here.
Okay, so now, the next thing. So the sheet is actually one sheet, it got cut off on the email. So this is an example of what every single non-salary account looks like. I assigned an alias, so you can look up there NS22 for every single one of our accounts. There's about 524 in the Concord PS, 350 on the Concord side. So instead of people referring to teaching supplies or the long account number, they're going to refer to the alias when it comes to the budget book. And this alias is going to be the numbers for my many years here. So as you can see, FY19's budget for this particular line item is $42,000, and everything is spelled out. Item number, description, the quantity, including shipping costs, and then the total cost. So for this particular item, the person is requesting $36,000. Right here. So again, it's one sheet, it got cut off, but they're requesting $36,000. And down here, I asked them to give justification. If you can't read that, the first one says, a brief description, reason why the items requested are needed. And then they're giving examples as to why each one is needed. A quick example, items 1, 6, 7, and 10 up on the top. Copy paper, copy supplies, 32 classrooms, 15 specialists, 430 kids. So they're justifying why they need this. The next section is a brief description of the impact or consequences of not getting it. An example of 1, 6, 7, and 10 not getting it. Lack of copy paper and supplies will impact the entire staff from the office to the classrooms. Pretty obvious. So we will have every single one for every single non-salary item.
So this account covers exactly whom? I mean, is it a teacher? Is it a department?
So this would be, say this is on the CPS side, and we're at the Thoreau School, and it's the teaching supply lines. This
For the
would-
whole school?
For the whole school.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
This is just an example
This
of
is
how
just
he's
an example.
building the
Yeah.
lines.
I made
so
this up, yeah.
This is all fictional.
Yeah,
No,
but this
we've
is
never
what
seen it.
we're going to be
I
getting.
understand.
It's sort of this is how zero base works.
Yeah. Good.
So this is what he's now sitting with the principals to say, I need one of these for every non-salary line that you are responsible for.
But how's that going over?
It's going just fine.
The
You have a
good thing
team
is-
ready to do this. You do.
Yeah.
You really do.
Everyone's very
That
eager.
is
What
awesome.
I've given them for backup is FY18's actuals. So they have what they spent in each
Yeah.
line, the description of what they spent, and the amount. So I've given it for every single line. If they need 17, 16, 15, I'll give that to them, but they at least have the numbers for those 5 years. So if something looks out of whack, they can say, hey, show me what I spent in FY16. Show me what I spent in FY15.
I think the other piece is that once you break out a budget into who's responsible for what and trim the salaries out, what they actually have for lines to work with gets far more manageable, down to 10 to 20 per person, so that this is doable. And at the high school, it breaks out, we're talking now down to the department head level, so they'll be doing theirs and feeding it up to Mike. So we're delegating it too. That's good.
So this is probably obvious to you, but I'd like to hear it from you. Imagine any one of these items, a toner. Somebody furnishes you the price. Do you not in fact furnish them
Yes.
a better price later?
I've done that many times already in this district. I'm really pointing everybody towards the tech bid. You'd be surprised at how much money you can save on toner. In one particular place, they ordered 10 toners, and I think I saved them $70 per toner.
So I would hope that that loop
Yeah.
is a very active loop.
That loop is already very active in
Yeah,
FY19.
okay.
Yeah.
We've
So that's
sent
what I'm
back
good at right
POs that
now.
aren't-
Great.
I don't know
Great.
the programs yet, but I know if I don't recognize a vendor, I look it up, I Google it. If they're not on the tech bid, I look and say, I send it back.
Is there a tech bid?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's one thing I can do this year.
That is awesome.
That's a lot of work. I think we need to acknowledge that that's going to be a lot of work.
Tech is everything, yeah.
And once you put in that investment now at that time,
Right, yeah. And
pay back over time.
a lot of, there are many people in this district using the tech bid. It's just getting the word out. So it's not everybody, there's a select few, and we're trying to get them on and figure
It
it
really
out.
was just communication, it
Yeah.
wasn't anything other than that. So
Right.
just tightening that up. And again, the appetite to approach this in a cost-efficient way is really readiness across the entire district. We're hearing, I'm so pleased and really proud of their response, and it's kind of a challenge, little,
Yeah.
how much can we save?
Yeah, that's the game.
Very quickly, for anybody who's watching this on TV, describe the tech bid, what we're talking about.
Sure, so we belong, and I'll let Jared do it, you'll do it better than
Yeah,
I.
we just belong to a collaborative, and basically they send a big, huge packet out that takes a lot of time for us to fill out. And we send it back to them, and then they bid out everything for us. We pay a very small fee, and you'd be shocked at how much you would save.
So
30,
these
40,
are
50%.
pre-approved vendors with most competitive prices out there for bulk purchasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, it's the scale that saves money, because multiple
you.
districts are bidding at the same time.
Right.
So
Wow.
bidding as one entity.
And if I have no further questions on this, is this one last thing that say other comments that they don't have to fill that out?
That's where they beg me to fund the line.
Right, right,
And they say, who's the new guy?
right. So the next one is an example of a salary worksheet. Again, this should be one line. So again, the alias, just so you know, when you see the budget, there's 3 codes. There's an S in front of it, so S7, that means salary. There's an NS, non-salary, and then there's an L, which means longevity. So the S right here is for salary. So again, the alias, the account number, what the budget was. I'm trying to create an FTE format for the district that I can present that, because we don't really present FTEs, and it's very easy for me to track if I have FTEs. So presenting some FTEs here. So first you have obviously the name, then you have the column, the step, the salary, and the seniority date. The reason why I put the seniority date down here is, well, many reasons. One, it tells me longevity. So I know if someone's at 9 years right now, longevity starts with teacher scale at 10 years, so I know to add them in my projections for FY20. If So in this particular example, we have 14.81 FTEs. This is the cost. Here's all the seniority dates, and here is my projected cost for FY20. So it includes the COLA, it includes everybody's step raise, and I rolled up, well, longevity is on another slide. So this is done for every single salary line. So there shouldn't be many swings once the budget's passed to next year. But if there is, and I get a question on it, I can say, oh, we had a lane change, we had a retiree, we had a department change, etc. Well, we should be able to answer it.
How'd you get Tom Sawyer to teach English?
Or John Lester.
Yeah.
He has to entertain himself somehow.
Or John Lester?
Yeah.
John Lester on salary?
John Lester came back and
That's
John
great.
Rondo.
I'll take Lester for 111 grand.
Who knows the last one? Anyone know the last name?
Is this what happens when you do
Albert
stuff at
Woods?
11 o'clock at night?
Tiger.
Oh, really?
That might be overpriced.
So now, if I don't have any questions on the zero base, I'm going to quickly jump into what I like to present monthly to you all. So monthly, I'm going to present a report by 1,000 functions. So this, when he was talking about DESI functions and everything, that's what I really care about. Because if I can get all of our functions correctly reported, then it would really, then I can defend the data. Because a lot of times, our data does not match the system, and that's really in every school district's case. But what I like to do is I call it a variance report. This one is by 1,000. That is DESI's functions for 1,000, and you can see that at the bottom what makes up those functions. And then it would have the approved budget, any adjustments. To date, we've only had 112,000 for adjustments and CPS. The new adjusted budget, expenditures to date, encumbrances to date, and the remaining unencumbered balance.
So what's an adjustment?
So a transfer.
Oh.
So it's a transfer.
Oh,
I just call it
An in
adjustments.
and out, okay.
Yeah. So this is again by 1,000. So just for simple math, if you added up the remaining balance, the encumbrances, and the expenditures to date, they should always equal the approved budget.
So basically, I was asking our friend from ClearGov about syncing up our categories in DESI, but really you're doing this.
I'm doing it, that's why, yes.
Yeah,
I
okay.
can go on and on, but
You got
yes,
that
these are my
covered
numbers,
already.
this is what I,
Yes.
yes. So I'm doing
Perfect,
it.
thank you.
So you'll receive this.
Exactly.
The goal is to, it's not a goal, I will present this if accepted every second school committee meeting of the month.
I think this is nice progression from the kind of more rustic transfer approach we were taking last year to now giving you something that's got a different, a little bit user-friendly to it, but you can still see the movement in a concise way. And I'll let him keep going, because he's going to offer you a little further dive too.
So in addition to the monthly report, I'd like to, what did I do? Offer a quarterly report. And this basically turns those 9 functions into by 100 function. So it turns into another 56 lines. So right now, here are all the functions we currently use. And what I want to say is DESI is always updating their functions. So a lot of times, it's tough to keep up. So at the end of the year, when we do our end of year report, we have to do a crosswalk to match our functions to DESI's functions, so it's not gonna always match. My goal and the new assistant business manager's goal is to update the accounts very soon so they're in line. So we'll have real time, what we believe is the real functions, and it's also interpretation. There's a lot of gray areas in these functions. So, but again, I want to report this to you quarterly, end of each quarter, end of September, end of December, end of April, and then sometime in June. And again, this is just another way of looking at that data, and it's the same headings. And then again, the totals equal the same, and they will always match out to the approved budget. And I'm going to go into my last slide, but this is the format that I'm recommending that I present to you all transfers. Instead of going line by line, which is very tedious, I would like to present my transfers to you by 100 function. Because each one of the DESI descriptions, they match DESI, and it's easier to present to you than every single line.
What you're showing us, we see on 2 pages?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So.
And you're, I'm sorry, but proposing this to be the quarterly?
This would be the quarterly report.
Got it.
Yep.
And Jared, right here, it's very clear to see the adjustment. It's 112 going out of one, 112 going into another. Those are the only two.
That's it.
If there are multiple adjustments, is there a way to note? I mean,
yes. So I'm going to
there is going
present
to be
that.
so many that it's hard to tell what's going where, or
And I'm going to show you exactly how it's going to
you're
happen.
getting there. All right.
So.
You knew what was next.
You knew what I was looking for.
Like I said,
Yeah.
we've only done one transfer to date. And it's a little small to see, but basically we did a transfer from function 1230 to function 2110. The amount, here's the appropriated budget for each one of those functions, the adjustment that we proposed, or the adjustment that's already happened actually in that account. The new balance, the expenditures to date, the encumbrance, and the remaining balance, and what we're transferring in and transferring out. And the rationale for this would be incorrect account number to Director of Teaching and Learning to the correct account number. Now, every single month, we're going to have, I'm not just going to do one transfer at a time. We're going to have, especially getting everything synced, there's probably going to be 300 transfers. So the goal is this is just a template. You're going to see multiple transfers when they're, so the way I do it is I obviously have to do it line by line. I roll it up into this, and then I send it off to accounting to make the transfers. You will get the result of that. And then if, say, God forbid, 2 days later we need to do another transfer, we'll have the same sheet, and you'll get it again. I won't bombard you with transfers. I'll try and do it once every 2 weeks. Have my big batch and then do it. But sometimes you might have multiple transfers.
So does that, I'm sorry, just quickly, so the next transfer list like this that we would see, would it no longer include this one? It's just the ones you've done in that time period? But the previous slide, you'll see them, they just get added in, and so it's going to get more full and...
But you will see the result of that in the 1000 series adjustments.
Okay.
So you'll see that 112 already adjusted. You'll see all of the adjustments already done.
Yeah.
But yes,
Okay.
I wouldn't keep that on there.
Yeah.
And then
These will have a start and end date.
right. And some of the descriptions are going to be very simple. Internal transfer at the Rowe School. They're asking to transfer $150 from teaching supplies to equipment, something like that. So the description's not going to be crazy unless it needs to be.
2 things. First, I'm going to just give you forewarning that because we built the budget before we had really started the transfer process, the budget's going to have a lot of transfers again this year because we're essentially redoing all of those transfers again to some extent to get FY19 synced up. Going forward, that will minimize it because then they'll be in the budget in the right places. So it will still be a big list, especially this early part of the school year. The second piece is that one of your legal responsibilities is to approve transfers. And there's usually a conversation among the school committee as to what level of approval you want to have. I would warn you that line item level approval is a dangerous place to try to keep up. Some committees have done at the hundreds level. Some are up at the thousands level, which is that first smaller grouping. And then we bring it to you at a certain frequency and you give it the vote. So I think that's something we don't have to settle tonight, but we do need to get a practice in place.
So, Jared, you gave us a really simple example, 112 in to this account and out of that account. How often is that the case versus 112 here, came out of here and went to these 4 places?
you would have that in the reason. So I'm gonna say I'm transferring from a contingency line. It might have $100,000 in it.
Okay.
And I'm transferring it into 5 different functions. It would be, you would see transfer out, 100,000, transfer in, 4 different lines, coming from contingency, function 2110, going to these, to cover overages. If there's a specific overage that you need to know, I'll certainly tell you, but for the most part, it'd just be covering overages, covering salaries, covering those lane changes like that.
It really depends, Mary. If it's a simple realignment, then it's a complete wash, and
Well,
it's even if it's
this one's easy
covering.
for us to see.
Yeah,
right?
I hear your point,
And-
yeah.
Yeah.
So he'll bring you a
We're not
nice
gonna, like,
complicated
try to
one
triple
first
check
batch,
what
and you
you're
can give
doing.
him feedback,
Yeah.
yeah.
And just as we think about whether we want to be approving, hundreds levels versus thousands levels, what kind of, the deeper we go, let's say we're at the hundreds level, how much does that hold you up from doing what you need to do if you have to wait, 2 weeks or 4 weeks for us to approve something? Yes, it does.
It's real time.
It's
I
real
mean, to some
time.
extent, we have to assume there's going to be an approval, and if you were not to approve it, we'd have to change
Yeah, we
stuff. So
reverse it.
yeah,
Right.
So
that's why you don't want to be at the line item level.
Right,
You'll
and that's
paralyze
what,
us.
exactly. I mean, we don't want to paralyze it. So that's why I'm bringing it up. Is I don't know
Yeah,
how
it's a
much.
fair question.
I don't know how
Or
much
is it a
difference
dollar
it makes.
amount?
Right.
You're going to report to us the hundreds quarterly and the thousands monthly.
Yeah.
It seemed to me we'd want to
Yeah.
approve the thousands monthly.
Right.
My
yeah.
previous experience has been the thousands.
The thousands. Then that makes sense.
And
Okay.
that's what we've been doing.
Right.
Just didn't look as pretty.
Right.
That would be easier for me but I'm whatever you like.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think you're.
No, I think that makes sense. I just wanted to get some
Yeah.
perspective on it. If that's where we've been and we're doing that monthly, that seems to make sense.
And we can always call out on a quarterly basis specific line items and say,
Yep.
have a discussion.
Yeah,
Right,
that's the
right.
point, yeah.
Yeah.
In the thousands of, we won't be crossing much of the thousands
That's right.
functions. So there won't be a lot of 1,000, 2,000. There might be some 2,000s to other thousands, but, so that's good. Then there won't be a ton of transfers really at your level C. But you'll see the results of it.
How hard is it to produce the report? Versus, instead of giving us thousands on a monthly basis, giving us hundreds.
It's all, the way I do it is manually, because I get to know the budget that way. So I have a budget that has all 500 lines, and then, once a week, every other week, I go through and plug the numbers in, and they're all tied into another sheet, which is then tied into the 1,000 sheet. But I already did the template, so that's the hard part.
Really?
So,
I know.
Sounds hard.
Yeah, not quite.
so would it be onerous to get the 100 on a monthly basis?
Say that again?
Would it be onerous to get the 100 on a monthly basis?
I've done it both ways. That's completely up to you all.
It is a lot of work.
In other words, he doesn't want to say
I'm going to protect people. It is a lot of
So
work.
we got this at like 9:30 last night.
Yeah, or later.
I do appreciate it. I don't want to set that kind of pressure. Maybe we start with a monthly.
I think, the biggest batch is going to be the first batch we bring you because of the work we've been doing from July until we bring it to you. After that, I really think it'll be a much smaller amount, and you'll see that if you got it monthly, it probably would be totally, you wouldn't have as much to do. It'd be nice
Wouldn't be
to
much to look at.
Keep up with it.
I think you'd see the real activity is going to get captured in the quarterly.
Well, you're gonna bring.
This first round's going to be big, but after that, it'll slow
Thousands
down.
level.
Right, yeah, that's true.
So I would take it as it comes,
Let's
and if
start
you
it
need
that way, yeah.
you'll know more of what you need as you're experiencing
And if
it.
thousands prompt us to dive deeper.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
Or we see the thousands and approve the monthly, approve the quarterly. See the monthlies, but approve the hundreds on a quarterly basis.
So the good news is in September, you're going to get both, correct? Because it's a quarterly timeline.
Let's look at it then and see how we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take it as it comes since it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
a little different.
Thank you, it's great.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you, Jerry.
Impressive, Jerry.
Good.
That is great.
What do you do with all your free time?
Yeah.
He thinks this is fun. So
It is, this is,
Thank
thank you.
We found the right person.
That's why I met them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all this, Jared. I know.
Mess them up after.
Ready to move to the next agenda item, which is school committee communications.
Oh, it is. I probably want in order.
We've talked about our subscriber list a few times. We're checking out to see what the cost will be for presenting options to potential and current subscribers. Right now, we just have a list where we decide on an individual basis which item goes out. And in the past, we've only done basically agendas and so forth. But Heather and I talked a little bit about this because we've talked about this for over a year. That is communications from the school committee. And there are some items that are obvious and that are official school committee business that I don't think anyone would have any problems in being part of the main part of this of the emails that go out to the subscriber list, and that would include agendas for full school committee meetings, agendas and meeting announcements for subcommittees, minutes of all meetings, the coffees, which I was going to mention later on. I would assume everyone is interested in having a schedule to do school committee coffees, presenting budget obviously, but also other subjects. And town meeting information is also, clear cut. We could also include other items, but, we could probably discuss this at a future time, such as special events at the high school, like a particular talk on opioids or some other subject. And but I think personally the list will grow for two reasons. If we have and give people the option to only subscribe to what they're interested in, number one, and number two, at the same time, we will need to really publicize this in every way we can so we can grow the number of subscribers. And so I think it's a worthwhile effort, and we'll see what happens. We have now about 80 people on it, which is a pretty good
Who's
number.
going to populate these pieces of outreach?
That's part of the discussion.
That's part of the discussion. That's why I mentioned those obvious, those obvious announcements. The school committee meetings,
Right.
obviously, no one has a problem if we send an
Yeah,
email out. to
the only thing
school committee.
is, because I sort of work on this for the Carlisle School Committee. and,
Oh, okay.
What I did was I developed, once you give me the meeting list, then I know exactly what the meetings are. So I have a prefab list of notices that are worded just a little bit differently. And I give them to the school to be put in the monthly notice. I put it on our Facebook page. It's all meets non-conversational restrictions. And so I haven't moved into special events and things like that that are somewhat unpredictable because we don't have a person to dedicate to it. But I mean, I know that my Facebook feed, I got 3 messages from the school committee myself, and I know I wrote them, but now I know what people are getting from us.
Sure, exactly.
I'm happy to share you guys templates of what I've done, but I think the thing you really have to think about is who is going to take care of vetting, writing, and getting this information out in a timely way. So don't get so far ahead of yourself that you want to tell them everything. You can't possibly cover the
That's a good point. That's a
information.
good point. As a matter of fact, that's why I'm kind of using this group of 5 or 6 different items as sort of a standard startup pilot part. And then as we go along, a month, 2 or 3 months from now, we could add maybe special events, or we could add something else that anyone is interested in, that the committee, agrees is of value, and bring it to the community. Sometimes there's articles in certain magazines that people should see in town. If we all agree, we ought to send that thing out.
So, may I give a little
Sure.
logistics on how
Yeah.
I did some research to find out how this was working when it was operational, because it was for a short window, all through my office. Leona's been the key. So the subscribers sign up, it automatically populates. And then her habit became that as she posted a school committee agenda, she then distributed it out to the list. Bob's asked just today if people can designate if they only want to get the agendas or if they want to get minutes, if those get posted. I don't know the answer to that, as to how laborious that might be in terms of differentiating the distribution. So I think some of the things that are already systemically in place of posting agendas and minutes, I think that one more step to send it to your distribution list is doable. I worry about things that aren't already in a system and need to have content generated as to who's going to create that. So, but there is some structure to work with that seems to have been effective. I think the trick got to be maintaining the habit. You had a very few bunch of users, so I think
Well, half of them are us.
I know, I've seen the list. So the momentum just faded off.
I did.
Right, exactly.
I don't get notices that our agenda is posted.
I don't
Do I
either.
need to sign up for this?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you should if we.
Well, I
On
go
our website.
looking because I know we have a meeting.
Wait, so the history is that a couple years ago, I think you took it on,
Yeah.
started this,
Yeah.
and got it up and running, but it stopped
It kind
at
of
some
lost
point.
momentum.
It lost momentum, and so it was very short-lived, but to your point, Christine, is it does take someone dedicated to populating, otherwise nothing goes out.
Right.
So that would be my concern too. I love the idea, but I don't know how it actually can get executed.
Well, the town does this, but
Yeah.
I think they have an information officer.
They do.
Yeah, no. It's a matter of.
We have
We're not
Mr.
gonna have
Lucy, who
the
sits
information
back there and gets a small
I know.
stipend.
Is this like one of those no reply email address? Like,
Yes, only
somebody,
distribution.
when someone,
Yeah, it kind of
somebody
points.
So I signed up, but I
There's a
probably
link.
haven't gotten anything for a year.
There's usually a link and it
No,
takes
it's
you
been
It
to.
hasn't been done.
It has been used.
Yeah.
Right.
no, just saying,
Either
if
she
it's
said-
an email, people always want to do a reply, so.
Yeah, no, there's no
That's not an
reply option.
Well, This is more just, you get it in your inbox, so it reminds you that it's there
Exactly.
versus having to think about going, oh, geez, there might be a school committee.
Yeah, Leona said she actually would upload the agenda, so you could see the agenda right within the email. You didn't have to go over to the webpage.
Mary, we're doing the same thing, so.
Yeah.
So the receiver thinks it came from whence if there's no reply?
I assume it looks like an automated emails distribution system. So I get this from the town I live in. I can identify those automated emails based on the address
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
and then it says, you can go to this agenda at this link. And it probably could get lost in spam if you're not careful, that kind of an email.
So assuming no conclusion tonight, is the default go back to the 80
think that's
people
the
and the basic information that gives people the agendas and minutes?
Well, and I think if we're doing it for 80 people, it might not be worth it. However, if we go out to the kind of the avenues that we use to announce things and announce this broadly, I wouldn't be surprised if we get more people to sign up. I mean, the point of doing it is to just flash out what we're doing. It's that I think people want to know more easily sometimes when we're meeting and what's on the agenda and what's happening. If we go through all of the, PTG newsletters and the high school, daily newsletter, that kind of stuff, announce in all of our avenues that this is an option, subscribe to the,
Let them do that.
right, so you're right, just announce it, subscribe to the school committee email subscription list, and you'll get all of these updates. I think we'll have more people sign up. And then it becomes worth it, and then I think you're right. We don't want someone to clearly have to create content, but if it could be some default things that Leona could send as she posts, send it as she posts the agenda and send minutes.
Tom does write a report after every meeting that we give to the 2 newspapers. That can
Yeah, if that
automatically
could
go.
go, right, exactly, if that could go in.
The other thing that I've included in the stuff that we send out is, I remember when I was running for school committee, I had to look up what the school committee did. And it sounds like a ridiculous question, but, and if you say they meet at CPS, well, maybe I'm new and I don't know what a CPS is. So I think that those little orientation points, certainly not for the high school, but actually maybe for some new
there
people
too,
to the high
yeah.
school. But for your people who need to learn jargon and, that the school committee doesn't hire the teachers, those kinds of simple things, or to direct them to the policies and how policies are reviewed. I think orienting them on a rotating basis of what the school committee actually does is a very helpful thing.
That's a
And
great
it's
idea.
all prefab, and you can send the same message every February, and so.
It sounds like you're good at this, Christine. I think we might want to recruit her, Bob.
Yeah, I think she's in charge
I'm
of
happy to
reach.
help with it because I mean, I love the fact that, things run really smoothly, but I think that if people don't come and something happened, then they feel like they've been left out.
Right.
I remember someone coming to a school committee meeting saying, in Carlisle, saying, could you guys tell us when you're going to do something important and then we'll come? And so,
Don't worry, tonight's all like, no need to
I
be
think
here.
it's very important to outreach that relationship, to say, we're here, this is what we do. I also do it on Facebook. You can do Facebook posting 6 months in advance. I've already done all the postings through February for Carlisle. So it's
Sign her up.
But, no, so now, one of the issues, you set these expectations that you're gonna communicate. So when this falls away, or we've had a meeting that the schedule got changed, and everyone's, you didn't tell us that, so you have to be really careful, because
No, it's
now
a
they're
good point.
relying on this.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm big on telling people, here's the email, and here's where to go find it. Don't give them the agenda, don't give them the minutes,
I
send them to
agree
the
with
website.
That's why Lori's
Teach them
point,
where the resources
Lori's
are.
point is very well taken. How much is this gonna cost and how effective is it
Right.
going to be? But until we find out and get an answer, we just don't know. I think it would be very helpful to various individuals to get something in an email that they don't have to go to the website to find.
There is so much on the website we want them to learn about.
But see, this is where Christine's
not
point
gonna
comes in. Every 2 or 4 weeks, we'll take one item and put that on there.
Let's start slow, though.
Oh, no, totally.
Let's manage expectations very
Yeah,
carefully
yeah,
here, so
absolutely.
we don't have to retreat at all.
Definitely.
And let's not rekey anything. If something is elegantly available on the website, why would we convert it and drop it into somebody's mailbox when we could more easily say, new agenda posted, go there? Would be, and then we get them in the habit we actually want them in, which is to go to our central repository of
Right.
information.
every one of your communications out should link them back to the website,
There you go.
so that
That's
you are
right.
teaching them to not need you.
So, I think you all know our agendas. If we send out an agenda a few days before the meeting and it changes the day before, now we're in trouble, because somebody didn't get those changes. And we don't,
Well, but
those
I
aren't always
think
communicated to us clearly.
So I wouldn't necessarily send the agenda. I think what I would send
That's
is the link to
Send
go
the
get
link.
it.
The link, because then if somebody
But-
looks at
Right,
it.
but so they look at it on
That's a good
Friday
point.
and we change it
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Monday.
yeah.
And it's less work.
So we put in
Really
the.
So we put in, I think you put in some standard wording with every
Yeah.
email. This is subject to change if necessary before the meeting.
It's my frustration, because often we don't know
And-
that something gets on the agenda or doesn't, and
Yeah, there has to be a
I don't want to be
certain
surprised, and if,
generic nature to what you send out. It has to be
Yep.
sort of generic,
yep,
but fascinating at the same time.
I see.
So
stuff on Facebook, get it.
I don't want to be a total downer, but I want to know who's going to do this work and how we're going to
Right.
sustain it. I love the idea because it'd be great for people. They don't have to go look.
Yeah.
But this is not a small amount of work, and to assume even that Leona will do it, I mean, it's remembering, it's timely, it's accurate, it's,
It's posted in so many
and
places.
I just worry that it's just ripe for disappointment and not working. We gotta go tell all the PTGs and start to advertise we have this, and then someone, I just,
So I don't think, I feel like if we use existing content and we put a process into place that's relatively automatic, that it wouldn't be that big of something to take on. I mean, yes, somebody's got to kind of own it in the sense of making sure that it's happening and things are going out. But I don't know that it's going to be that much of a time commitment if some of it is automatic. If we ask Leona, every time you post the agenda, can you send it out with this? And if every time the minutes are approved, they go out to the subscription list, then I feel like is that?
Yeah, no, I think
Not
my
too
office can
difficult?
commit to the agendas, the minutes, and Tom's report going out.
Okay,
Which is great.
and that's
That's a pretty regular flow of information.
That's a pretty regular flow, and if there are other things that we want to add, we can think about, if somebody wants to own more of that. I could volunteer to at least do some initial reach out to all of those various avenues and announce it.
I think the mechanism there, though, would be, because then that's Heather-centric. So when you leave the school committee, then that dies. So
Right, I wasn't talking about ongoing, I was saying a one-time announce it.
But I
But-
think what should happen is some contact information from each one of those organizations needs to be on that list. So that list,
Yes,
We'll
goes
send
out.
them-
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Clarify that for me.
so if I'm the PTG,
Yeah.
and there's an email that belongs to the PTG, I'm assuming you have a generic email as opposed to, you know,
There is their
Becky
public
Lindstrom.
one, yes, there
Okay.
is for each one.
then each of those generic emails for those groups, the PTGs, should receive that
Be
email
on
from
our
the owner.
subscription list.
I understand. Yeah, just a default add the PTG info
Yeah.
at or
Well, it should be
whatever
the
they're using.
PTG's, you know, whoever manages their newsletter and stuff.
If they're smart, they'll forward
It
it out
would be the
there.
newsletter editor's email,
Yeah,
yes, which
that's
is
right.
a unchanging email, so it doesn't have to change each time the
Right.
editor comes in.
And I would send it to the president of the PTG and the publicity person. Shall we work on
Christine,
this?
could you help us work on this?
Yes.
That would be great. Thank
It
you.
should be Lori. Are you-
I'm still
are you
processing
content with
that
this?
part. I just know the PTG ladies are trying to keep up with their own emails, and I think they should want this before we just automatically send it to them.
That's a very good point.
I think Heather, you were going towards just getting it in their newsletters so that people who want to sign up.
Yes, I was talking about just a
Right,
one-time
just sign up.
announcement of the
Yeah.
subscription list,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Not a regular.
And Lori, we could bring that up at the next PTG president's
Yes, we can.
meeting
And
and see what the response is.
Whether it's in those meetings in the past or just talking with PTG presidents and members, I have heard them say many times, it would be great for you guys to give us regular feeds of information that we could publish that size.
And did you say it's all on the website?
Right?
Yeah, that's where I'm
Of course,
hesitating. I
but-
know how they publish and how they operate. I don't know if I'm republishing the school committee report that Tom writes and blasts. I don't know how that makes sense to me
I think
exactly.
the thing is that with outreach like this, because, you know, you always have to strike that balance between how much stuff are we filling their inbox boxes with
Right.
versus the people who say, well, I didn't know. So I think you sort of have to throw a lot of it against the wall to see, you know, it's going to stick on Facebook for you, and it's going to stick in email for you, and it's going to stick in a newsletter for you.
Yeah.
So I think that I would send it out and then let them push back and say it's too much.
So just so you're clear, you know that, you know, the way that PTGs are sending stuff out right now is through their people who want their emails shared with the PTG, and then it goes to them, and we're trying to clean up a not perfect system there as well. So it's not as great maybe as it sounds. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And I've seen what they're sending out. They're sending out enormous amounts of
Yeah.
stuff, and
And nobody waits it that long.
I'm not sure I want them to then, they're not going to attach minutes or agendas, obviously,
No,
but
no.
they might try to just, in ease, attach Tom's report, which maybe there's benefit, maybe there isn't, I don't know.
The point, I thought
So.
we're trying to use them to get subscribers.
Yeah.
Then they're out of it.
I think right now they're out of it.
Because we want individual subscribers.
So to that point, rather than ask them to put it in once, if we could just ask them to put
They have like a
a link to the
homepage or-
sign up for it, and it's
Sign up for
just
school
it's always in
committee
their
email.
template.
Yeah.
They build, so
That's
it's
all
there.
they-
Yeah, and I just want to be sure you don't lose track of the power of the systems that are already in place. I write a monthly newsletter to the parent community through ConnectEd, which is every single parent who gets summaries. Most of my, if you read them, which maybe you do,
Yes, we do.
most of it is what I'm bringing to all of you. They will look very familiar to you. I usually start with one of my reports to you and make it more layperson friendly. And they're getting all that fairly regularly on a monthly basis as to what we're focused on here. So it's not maybe as much of an abyss as it was. I don't know quite what was going on before I got here, but there's regular information. And I do get emails back, so I know there are some folks reading. So I want that to be part of the context, because our most powerful tool is actually the school-based tools, where we reach every family
Right.
through, because it's school-based
You
information.
reach every family in the school.
Well, we send things to them, so it's.
No, so we talked about this in Carlisle recently. There are a whole lot of people that should know what's going on in this meeting that don't have children in the school.
School.
Of course, and that's the
And
point of the
that's what we're
subscribers.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
we don't know how to get to them.
That's right, because that's back to the
That's
PTG
it.
conversation, you're just gonna get the same people.
Yeah.
So
It's
is
the outside
this,
community.
so is this agenda item really about this email? About this?
Bob and.
No,
Heather
because
said
how
that,
well
right?
we communicate. No, I guess what I'm trying to find out is, what is the question that we're trying to answer?
Or the problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Pushing out more school committee information to those who don't get it now.
Okay.
I think
So
that's the
it
primary
sounds
function.
like-
Outbound
It
communication.
sounds like there's a lot going out, though.
Well, like you
There's some
said,
going on, yeah.
people that don't have kids.
But it's, all the stuff we do here is on the website. That's what I,
So what about-
you got, I'm trying to, what is it? Teach them to fish.
What about, for instance, your letter that goes to all the parents? Is there a reason that letter, the link to that letter couldn't go out from the school committee to those people who aren't unconnected, townspeople? Who don't have kids in the schools?
Through the subscriber list?
Yeah,
Yeah, of course I could.
I mean, I think
Yeah, that'd be another
originally
good
we
thing.
sort of
That's a good
envisioned
idea.
that kind of.
So I guess what we're really trying to do, though, is find a way to get non-school families onto the subscriber list. That's really what we want to do, is we want to
I think
be,
that's
I'm not sure
part of
that's
it.
true.
I don't think that's only it. That's part of the goal.
right.
And other ones can be school families also. I think this started, and maybe we need more context, it started a couple of years ago when we felt like either there wasn't enough, or the community felt like there wasn't enough outbound communication from the school committee to just let people know what was going on. So we started to talk about, okay, how can we better communicate with the community? A lot of different things came up. We did a bunch of things. We've been doing coffees, and I think we'll continue that kind of under the same umbrella. I think we've done more announcing things through the PTG newsletters and that kind of stuff. And another concept was this subscription.
There is, and I think,
Subscriber list.
yeah, part of it came, the town has had this sort of, you can put your name on a subscriber list and get these updates, and the schools didn't have it.
Right.
We sort of were school-centric, thinking we're pushing all this information out to the parents and the students, that's what needs it, and that's all it needs it. And the community was telling us that's not the case.
So maybe to move this along, I'll make a couple of suggestions. One is we will send the link to the PTGs to go into all the newsletters to those families.
Yeah.
I will send the link out to the community through Connect Ed. There's no reason I cannot do that.
That's great.
And then I will link with all the community groups that I have built some nice partnerships with, which off the top of my head is League of Women Voters. I'm at the Rotary Club next month. Sustainable Concord, and the list goes on, and make sure that those leaders can pass it out to their memberships.
Right.
And then we'll just keep spreading the word and see what happens. I will commit to sending out the documents we already have. Agendas,
Sure.
minutes,
Yep.
Tom's report, and my monthly newsletter.
That'd be great.
And see where we go.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think that's perfect. Thank you.
Don't think anybody else had a to-do list there, but
I know, certainly,
That's why it works so well.
I don't actually. That's why I said it's fine. It's all built on those regular structures.
Do you want me, I had said I would take on
You wanna take the
announcement
PTGs?
through kind of PTGs and those channels.
Why don't you take
I can
that?
do that if
That's
you want.
fine. The
Let's
rest is
just
just getting my
coordinate on
office
what we're
to-
saying, so we're sending the same thing to the different.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
No, that's great. That's actually not that much work. It's
Okay.
a one sitting.
Can I ask for a 5-minute break?
You can.
if only 5.
Yeah.
Is it 4-hour meeting, only 4 hours?
Five.
You want a break?
5 minutes.
5
All
minutes.
right, 5 minutes.
Oh, it is?
Our agenda says.
All right.
What's that?
8:30 end.
Okay,
We have 1 hour.
break.
Let's go.
Yep.
Perfect.
I'll try to make it last, Heather.
Thank you.
Cordy, do you have the
Now she's
extras?
about to go back and
Behind you.
Thank you. Oh, perfect.
Fair enough.
It's the chocolate's fault.
All right, so the next on the agenda is the review of the goals. And there's CPS and there's, I think, I don't have the link, right? So,
Yes, they're both on the link.
and I'm assuming at some point we want to set some goals for next year.
Got you.
But in first order of practice, I guess, would be to go through these goals and see, sort of as a quick analysis, how we did. So the budget development, develop a budget that supports the core values and mission of the Concord Public Schools for approval at the 2018 Concord Town Meeting. I would say we did that. That's great.
Well,
Budget development process goals, review and refine the budget development process to more effectively plan for financial needs and sustainability, as well as to work more collaboratively with key stakeholders. I would say
I think we made a good start on that, and we're
we might want to
further revising.
adjust it a little for our new goal this year with Jared, and, or as we kind of move forward. I think that was the intent of this goal, to sort of reassess how we do it and look at it. Superintendent support and evaluation. Goal is to support the superintendent in her entry plan and district goals and to develop and implement a superintendent evaluation process that aligns with the entry plan, district goals, and school committee goals. So I think we accomplished this well, and I think you accomplished it well. I mean, we supported you, but you did a good job with this.
Oh, you highly supported me.
And we did have an entry plan and goals and sort of trying to pursue that together. If anyone has other comments on that.
Well, and I would say, just if we're talking about going forward, obviously I think this is an important one to continue. And I would also even say, given that we all had some confusion towards the end of the evaluation about what metrics we were using and things were a little, that maybe we can get ahead of that, you know, include it really as a forward-thinking part of our goals this year to get ahead of that and make sure that we are all completely on the same page as we get to that evaluation.
Good point. Sorry, writing my notes myself, yeah?
To that end, can we actually like schedule someone from MASC, or is there somebody, is there a good resource that,
That's a good point.
like a little training session or something we could do?
Yeah, MASC would certainly offer you a session. That's
Yeah.
probably Dorothy Presser
Yeah.
who was here last year.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That would be great.
I'll get some information.
Thank you.
HECTO usually does a session too. Every year.
Who does?
Yeah, I can reach out to them.
Yeah.
At one of their regular,
Yeah,
like the 9 o'clock meeting?
it's one of the more heavily attended. I think it's at the regular meeting. It might be.
I don't think it
It
is.
might be a separate session maybe.
I think it's a
I think it's a
separate
separate session.
Yeah.
Because the room's set up
I've never
differently.
seen it, okay.
All right, I'll
Yeah.
get as much information from both.
Great, thank you.
All right, goal, strategic plan goal. By June 2018, that was 2 months ago, develop a strategic plan that supports core values and mission of the Concord Public Schools. Again, I think we supported you in developing that strategic plan,
You were highly engaged, though. Highly engaged.
but you led us, and I think you helped us well.
It was, yeah.
I mean, it was
Thanks
everyone.
to Lori, we
but-
accomplished that goal.
Kudos all the way
And
around.
it does say in
Yes.
the key actions that you would provide periodic updates and provide final issues, so I think collectively, we did a great job on that.
Yeah, we did what we said we were going to do.
Something we'll talk about next in the agenda that we can look towards maybe future goals.
Yeah.
Community engagement and communication, we were just talking about, by June 2018, the school committee will provide multiple opportunities by multiple means, and in various venues, all over the place, for school committee, community engagement and communication in order for parties to share information, exchange ideas, and address concerns. There's actually a pretty long list of actions and priorities, but I would say that overall in the communication, we'll enjoy hearing others, but you know, that the school committee community engagement seemed to be improved throughout the year and more with ease and more readily available, starting with, you said 2 days and there weren't any controversies. I think 2 days into school last year there was a controversy. Or not a controversy.
Yes, no, indeed.
An
It's
issue.
been a very smooth opening.
We're dealing with a lot of bus issues and parking issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we anticipate
Checking every day to make sure I've already.
You know, I think a couple things I would say from my vantage point, especially having just gotten here at the time, you know, forums and things like that on the issues that needed the time were something you opened yourself up to, and I think that made a huge amount of difference. Whether it was parking, or not, well, we got to the parking, whether it was the transportation pieces and the challenges there earlier in the year, the calendar a little later on, all of that mattered enormously. And then the budget coffees that sort of took the same theme to the budget cycle. I think you made yourself very available to this community, and it definitely mattered. So, you know, I think you should feel really good about all of that, even if the subscriber list isn't up and running. But you made a lot of progress.
We're working on it.
We can include that.
I think you made yourself available in a really personal way.
We decided today, it's under the
It's
law.
probably more effective in the long run.
Right.
Well, as we work on that this year in one of our goals and to, you know, further the coffee system, I think that's a good goal to keep in our list.
Yeah.
Yep.
Calendar by December 2018, assimilate feedback from calendar working group and publish 2018-2019 Concord Public Schools calendar.
Whew.
We did
We
it.
have that one behind us.
And that was a very careful and thorough and, you know,
Interesting process.
exhausting, sensitive, all the above process, but we
Also
got there.
exhaustive.
Exhausted, yes, and we got there, I think.
Exhausted.
We did,
We learned a lot in that, I think. I did, certainly,
definitely.
in that process. Cultural proficiency, it's probably come up again. By June 2018, evaluate initial cultural proficiency work and develop goals from basic training for the FY19 year. So I would say we did some good evaluation and we're on the doorstep of being able to, with the strategic plan and some of the work you.
So we have a pretty solid professional development plan for this year because we wrote a CDF grant last spring and have funding. So the kickoff was Tuesday morning with the amazing Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. And now there's a line of activities for staff to participate in, and they're highly engaged. We get such a great reception from them since the other day. There's a lot to come.
Does all the staff participate, and how do you make them participate?
So we're talking on multiple tiers, and so there's voluntary opportunities, but we're also going to be using a good amount of time that's built into the calendar where all staff have to participate, because we know we have to get to all of them. So we'll be using staff meeting time and things like that. We met with the principals already to sketch out some of those calendars and talking what those topics will be, and it should be a nice complement to each other to have both. And of course, we're hoping that the energy from the keynote trickles into the discussions that go on in the schools, and
So that wasn't recorded, was it?
You know, that's a shame if
I
it
don't
wasn't.
think it was.
Yeah,
They
that's a
often
shame.
don't allow you to, I don't know.
She made her message very accessible to everybody in that room, I thought, so I'm not surprised that it will generate some.
I've watched all the
some
schools this
energy.
week, and it just, that's all they want to talk to me about.
Wow. That was really well.
One of the things on our goals, and we had the EDCO training there, the,
Yes.
I wasn't here for, but the
Oh, yeah,
full
that's
day.
right.
Yeah,
session, right, so
yeah,
we did that, but,
Yeah.
you know, anything like that we might tag along.
Yeah,
would be
I think
great.
actually that
Coming
training
up.
was important
Oh,
to
yeah.
the next layers of the discussion,
Definitely.
Yeah.
because we all learned a lot.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
we
That
needed
would
to
take
know
some
going
time.
forward.
Talk a lot of the same language.
Yeah, and it set the stage for understanding things differently.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be more that we can kind of focus on as goals for the.
You know,
I feel like in terms of a goal,
Yeah.
we accomplished this and it was a first step, and now there's so much more out there.
And I'm not sure this is a conversation that really ever gets to an end.
Right,
No,
right.
to
It's
do
a
it right,
continuous.
keep talking.
Yeah.
Because it always changes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay, the Concord Middle School Facilities Planning. By June of 2018, establish next steps and timeline and planning process for new CMS facilities. In essence,
We did that, and we will add that again this year.
we'll hope we have, yeah,
But
new
but
information.
with new dates and better turnaround times. But
Could you speak to the March 2018 educational visioning process? Help me understand that.
Oh, I certainly can. We started that in one direction and shifted gears a bit, partly because we didn't get funded. So really the beginning part was to talk about what instruction would look like in a new facility, and it morphed into the reconfiguration conversation, which then led to our coming here and saying we'd like to put all of 6th grade in Peabody next fall and all of 7 and 8 in Sanborn, and allow us to then take the instructional discussion from there. So that is the plan. That is the plan for the next fall, and it's highly known among the community and overall very well received. And boy, even as we open this fall, I was with Justin yesterday and today. I was like, boy, next year this just won't be an issue. It's going to really clean up and give us a lot of new opportunities that we just don't have right now with how we're doing things.
I've heard a lot of, just in terms of talk on the street, a lot of parents talking about it as, you know, knowing it's coming, glad it's coming, just all positive.
I mean,
feedback on that.
the introduction to the 6th grade included this discussion, so it was very clear that wherever you are for 6th may not be where you are for 7th and 8th. I think, you know, we're a year out ahead of it, and it's what everyone knows is going to happen. And we're already working on the building piece of what needs to get done. A couple of small things. One, the most major thing is make sure I had another lab at the Sanborn for the 8th grade. So we did some tiling in a room downstairs that needs to have tile instead of the rug. This summer we did that. So we're excited. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
You mentioned the conversation with the sixth graders. Is there any plan to do anything with the 2 7th grade cohorts this year to sort of help them get to know each other before they?
I haven't talked to Mr. Karen on that, but he is a master at all of that transitional thinking, so I certainly mentioned it to him, but I'm guessing he already has.
That's great. That will be great.
I can't wait. I think it's fun.
I will warn you, enrollments are hovering a little tight, so we're watching carefully to see if, there may, we're trying not to, but there may be another mod needed at Sanborn. We're just watching carefully. The goal is we've got it done by the budget cycle to have that discussion.
Right.
I'm pushing on Justin to get creative so we don't have to do that, but just so you know. Yeah.
Okay, and finally, assessing protocols, I guess hence the, also having these, right? Is
Yeah,
right?
I don't know what
I'm
you
not
want.
sure, so it
I don't know
says,
that rises to the level of a goal anymore.
well, our goal is by November, the school committee will develop and publish in document form protocols that will guide the conduct of committee business. And we said we review and finalize current drafts, protocol document, develop and discuss school committee's practices document, and then review committee protocols and practices in June of 2018. Well, we're doing it in August of 2018, but I think probably we, I don't know, I can't remember, did someone else,
Yeah,
did we ever really circle back to these?
I think we didn't.
As good as I think they are, because I wrote some of them. I think that maybe we should, and then at the end of each one of these, the practices and the protocols, it says, the school committee will review and revise each year the part of the committee in a self-reflection and self-evaluation.
I think we talked about them. To be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, and I should have brought it up again as chair last year, I think we talked about, kind of hashed through them once, and then we were going to come back to them to kind of finalize any changes, and I think we didn't even come back to them. Other things rose to the top of the list, and we never got it back on the agenda.
Can we just put them on for the next agenda?
Yeah, I think that, I think
It's also kind of a reminder.
Absolutely.
Right.
I do like
Just
really
about how
go
we,
through them and
yeah.
how we operate.
And to
just
Mary's
do that.
point, I want to underscore, I think also what happened was that it's important for us to review this and have a concise way to sort of approach if there are any changes or highlighting the things that we do, but this is,
Things that
I don't want to sit and read through them all.
No,
Right now, no.
I just noticed it was something we had talked about, and then I thought it might come up in the conversation, especially when you got to that goal.
Yeah, and I think,
so,
I think that's great, and I think what we should, when we set our goal, when we revisit, sort of finalize if there's any changes, otherwise we approve them again, because these are things that don't need to change necessarily.
Right, and just in how I communicate with all of you, there are some minor things that I do think need to get talked on because you're not exactly all on the same page, and I'm mediating that a little bit, but I'm only going to get so far when people aren't coming at it the same way. So
for
nothing major.
future discussion, and certainly to know ahead of time, the areas you'd like to focus as much as anybody else.
Yeah, I think Mary's alluded to a couple of just the agenda setting and the timeliness of that, and at what point is the agenda the agenda. The other one that I think we might talk about even tonight is voting, and I know we tried to get to something on this. If we have something come up, what's our mindset if it has to be voted? Can it be voted that night, or is it an automatic wait, or is it an item at a time? I think we all need a little more discussion on that. For clarity of expectation. Those are my two.
Yeah,
That's a good thought.
I think those are both excellent things to consider and get on the same page. I agree.
So we're done with the Concord goals? All right, so we'll
Yeah,
go-
well, I'll just say I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we'll go next to the regional school committee goals. And some of these items have already been covered, so I don't think we need to go into detail on them. I have some others that I want to just mention, but, in terms of time, I don't think we need to discuss them, and we'll maybe discuss them at a future meeting.
Yeah, most of these ones.
Budget development, the process review, the superintendent support and evaluation we already talked about, strategic plan we talked about, community engagement and communication we talked about, calendar. Cultural proficiency is something that our good friend Dan Conti mentioned in that email he sent to us a year ago, and that should be it seems to me a permanent item, you know, as we go forward. We did the Campus Advisory Committee, thank you, Mary, for all the work on that, and assessing protocols. So that's something that I think, again, in the interest of time, we ought to look at them, and maybe if there's one or two that we want to look at a little closer, maybe at one of our next meetings.
Yeah,
you know.
perfect.
May I offer a suggestion for a future
Please.
goal for you to think on?
Yeah.
And Dan gets all the credit for this. The regional agreement has not been looked at
Yeah.
since 19
Yeah.
something.
Fine.
I think that would be a really valuable endeavor, not to assume there's a change in the outcome, but just to know what's in there.
Yeah.
There are other options on how you structure it, get versed in what those are, and just do a dive in it.
So I wrote down about 5 or 6 items here, and I just, like I said, in the interest of time, I'm just going to mention the names, and then everybody can think about them, and then next meeting, we can kind of, I'll have some more detail on them, and we can have a more intelligent conversation.
Sorry, Bob, you're talking about as potential goals for this coming year?
Potential goals for the coming year for the region.
Okay.
And I looked at Dan's email first, and as Laurie mentioned, he said the regional agreement hasn't been looked at since 1974. Clearly, there's some wording that has to be changed on that. We now have a select board and not a board of selectmen, and stuff like that. But also, one point he mentioned is a different way of looking at the statutory contribution, and he was saying that there could be, and I'll read this change in the calculation of the assessment would benefit both towns as the demographics shift one way or another at the high school. Basically, in this approach, the assessment is based on a 3-year rolling average. So this is something I think we ought to look into, and I'll try to do some work on this, but it's just something that he had in that email, and I know he gave that a lot of thought, and so I want to kind of go forward with
Interesting
that a
as
little bit.
something to me to put under that bullet, but that goal of look at the regional agreement.
Yeah, exactly.
It's within that,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And another point he made, look at the technology budget.
Can I go back to the?
Yeah, please.
How do we change the regional agreement?
I was going to say, that's
Well,
that's probably the first thing
I
know.
we ought to do is
Do I need to, like,
determine
go
what
back to Congress?
process is.
It's a town
We should
meeting.
find that, I think it's a town
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
We need to get versed in all steps of all of
Okay,
this.
because I don't want to go read all this and no, we should do this and then.
No.
Oh.
I'll check into that.
Okay.
It's a manager
Mars,
version.
we should read.
Right, we can get support from the Regional School Committee Association, so we're happy to start that conversation.
Okay.
Sort of a miniature version of what the town did with the charter review committee.
Yeah, exactly.
When they reviewed the town charter 3 or 4 years ago. And that obviously would be I think the first and biggest thing is just to figure out what can be done and how is it done.
And one other point he made is technology budget. Consider making this an annual warrant article. Bedford does it this way, I think, so I'm going to check into that. At the very least, the technology costs need a thorough review, and this by necessity will involve a review of the technology curriculum and philosophy throughout the district.
So we're doing all of that.
Exactly. I was just going to say,
The
you're doing
warrant
that.
piece, that would be your discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
we're very much doing it.
And as I mentioned earlier, he mentioned cultural
I mean,
efficiency.
all the technology spending out of the budget.
Yeah, as capital.
Oh, and do it as a capital expenditure.
Yeah. I have similar questions about buses as to whether they might be a capital warrant, which I can look forward to the conversation.
Okay, and so, again, very quickly, what I would like to see us look at, and also was mentioned by Dan, is the athletic fee structure. Also, the user fees of any part of the campus, and this is something maybe that we ought to discuss at our next meeting as far as the oversight committee, subcommittee of campus is concerned, whether we want to get into that or not.
Fees?
Yeah, user fees, for outside users of fields, parts of
It's
the
actually
building,
the
et
tennis
cetera.
courts.
Right, so we're well underway on that because we
Okay.
knew that charge was on the table already. So Jared's picked up where I left off last spring and getting ready to bring you proposals.
Okay.
For all fees?
I would need guidance on the athletic fee. We did raise the athletic fee last spring, so I
Yep.
don't know what else there is we would do there, but I'm open to.
And as we discussed earlier, improve agenda posting timeliness.
Yeah, that's your
So
protocol.
that's something.
That should not be your goal. That should be.
No, that's back
Should be a
on.
standard procedure, right, okay.
Even if athletic fees remain untouched, I think they need to be discussed because the increase was not insubstantial. We have to look at how that rolls out this
Sure,
year.
yeah, bring the facts to you.
And last two, we discussed earlier having an MASC field director visit one of our meetings. And besides what was already discussed, I think if we get a refresher on, what's, what we can discuss between meetings and so forth, what's deliberation exactly and all that. I mean, I keep reading about it and
Talk about
there's some gray areas that are very difficult to be certain of. And I think that type of person, the field director from the MASC, would give
Is that
us.
MASC or is it somebody from what's the office that
MASC.
handles open
I mean,
meeting law?
That's the final arbiter is the Attorney General.
I mean, do they come out, do they do?
We can find out.
Yeah.
They do.
They do.
open
I'm
They
sure
do.
they
I'd
do.
like to hear that
Yes,
from them
yes, they
versus
do.
the
Yes, they do.
MASC.
Well, I think they come to Carlisle almost.
Yeah, they probably do. They're very
Yeah,
accessible for that. You can
yeah,
call
I
them
think that'd be
anytime.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last point is sort of a personal area of interest. I would say it'd be a good goal for us to stay engaged in solar power generation possibilities at the high school. Just be engaged. In other words, there's no particular timeline and so forth, but
I think until the light plant can take the, there's no place for it to go right now.
well, on top of the roof. Anyways, I'll
The
have more
grid
clarity.
can't do it, the grid isn't robust enough to handle anything.
Not for a big project, but for a small project above the building there's some possibilities there.
There are
I'll have
things
more
that
clarity.
Can't that
Move
just,
around. It can
well, maybe
change.
you might want it more broad, but should that not be part of the oversight, campus
Yeah,
oversight?
exactly.
You know,
Yeah. So we
potential
could do
project.
that. Yep. Okay.
Honestly, that's a conversation beyond the high school, honestly.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of
Yeah.
other options across the Concord schools as well.
Correct.
Some of those roofs
Correct.
are
Yep.
also ready or could be ready, and so.
That kind of raises, just thinking through, okay, that crosses both schools. Another thing that crosses both schools are other sort of recycling, composting,
That's-
energy efficiency things that, I don't know if that's something that we
Right, so we.
want to try to tackle from this venue or from yours.
Yeah, I think there can be any.
Combination.
We're constantly trying to make progress there. We are composting at all the schools this year. We also you're sitting on the commission that Kate Hanley's forming. I forget the name of it.
And MVP.
There we go. It's called. So she's got a broad group across town. The water cooler. So the list is endless. The green team was here from the high school. So I think if you want to get a little more organized about it, I was getting ready to consider some sort of standing group, because one of the challenges I have had since I got here is there's always ideas coming in, and I feel very alone in deciding what we go forward with and what we don't. So I was considering some sort of representative group to meet with me and say, here's this quarter's list of ideas, what part of this would we go forward with or not? So that was on my kind of personal goal for this year, was to build in some structure to that.
There's also,
Good idea.
Bluebird is going to start to create
Yes,
some
they are.
competition in the electric bus.
American-made,
Market.
lower cost
So,
electric.
That's another space in there that we should be keeping track of.
Okay, that's it.
The only thing I would add to that list of ideas, we mentioned earlier, but just to make sure it's on our list of ideas, is to focus on that evaluation process. So
Okay.
again, we already said it, but just to keep it on that list of things to be aware of.
Okay, so
So
now.
just-
So just, maybe you had the same question I did, which is next steps on this. Is someone gonna create a draft of this coming year's goals?
Yes.
Oh,
I think someone
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, we should probably do
okay.
Yep.
Concord-specific stuff in 2 weeks and just a short meeting. Because we probably have something on there about the middle school and
definitely.
Yeah, so we do that in 2 weeks, and then we
Yeah.
do the
Another
region
one, maybe 4 weeks.
at this meeting in a month.
Perfect.
Okay, so next agenda item is strategic plan.
Great. So what I've provided to you, and it's actually tweaked a little since then, but I wanted to give you the cleanest copy that we're working off of. So this is the plan as of June 25th. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll certainly highlight some components. So this is, and I continue to say this is the draft plan, and the reason I'm still saying draft is because I have work to do in rolling this out. And not that we're necessarily at a place we're going to take a lot more feedback, but I want to be sure that people feel like it's not been a top-down plan and here's the strategic plan.
Right.
So I'm still leaving the word draft on probably through the early fall while the communication of the plan is still occurring. So our mission is in place. It's almost identical to what it was for the last 20 years, which I think is a testament to the mission we had. The whole strategic planning group has taken a look at that, and that's what we've come up with. We have a vision statement. This one I'll read because I love it. Students of Concord and Concord-Carlisle regional schools actively seek varied pathways through which they achieve their potential and find joy. That's my favorite word in the whole document. They will possess a strong sense of self and embrace their responsibilities as members of both local and global communities. We've connected this in with the visions of student learning that Kristen worked on up into a year ago. So we want to be sure all our documents are correlating and complementing each other. So that isn't a product of the process, but it's a prior document that now can be embedded. We did re-look at the core values and had some really hearty discussions. Those of you who were there will recall. Excellence being the biggest discussion point. But this is where we are as of right now. Excellence, engagement, perseverance, inclusion, and innovation. The theory of action is a summary statement of if we do certain things, our outcome will be the vision. So that's your guiding premise. And the meat of the plan is the grid with the objectives and the initiatives. So I'll remind you, this is 5 years worth of process. Strategic objectives, and I am going to read these just for the sake of the TV camera. Multiple paths to success is number 1, employing teaching practices that are highly engaging, emphasize innovation, and offer multiple paths to student success. Number 2 is focused on well-being, establish and commit to ensuring student achievement through student well-being. And you'll see in a minute some of the initiatives that lead to that. Inclusive culture, creating a collaborative, inclusive culture in the schools and community that values diversity and recognizes the contributions and the uniqueness of each learner. And then the innovative environment, creating a physical environment that catalyzes student learning through safe, healthy, and innovative indoor and outdoor spaces. So under each of these, and not necessarily in chronological or priority order, are initiatives to accomplish those objectives. So this is the direction of what's going to happen to get to those objectives. Each of these initiatives, we are about to write action plans for the priority initiatives. I've had one meeting at our administrative retreat to look at the initiatives and start to suggest the priorities. We're following up next Tuesday to solidify that and start to talk action plans. Number 1 step on every action plan will be discussion with the staff and faculty to be sure that they believe that our priorities are the right priorities. So from our side right now, and I'll just quickly talk on the initiatives and then tell you what the priorities are. Under the multiple paths to success, really this is our instructional objective. I want to be sure you all see it that way. So this is about tiered levels of support. It's the special education process and the reviews that we've started. Professional development as to what innovative, interdisciplinary, and engagement really mean in the classroom. Providing support and opportunities for interdisciplinary learning. Those are more programmatically based. Developing programs in terms of how we prepare students for different paths in addition to college. That's an attempt to, not everybody maybe is the college track, and making sure that we've got other options and broadened our ability to serve those kids and build their confidence that that's a great thing. Anyway, and then really it's about how we share and continue to work with our faculty as the highly skilled educators that they are, and using them as experts with each other. The priorities we're proposing and will propose to the staff right now are seeds that are already well started. So I can't really quite explain how validating this process was to have the things that were already started, take all that data, come from so many different directions, and have those be the initiatives that then confirmed we were on the right track. So the intervention process, which is the tiered levels of support, that's the RTI work you've been hearing about for the last couple of years. And I'll wait till the principals are here to tell you what work we're doing on that this year, but things are still moving forward really, really nicely. And then number 2, you're very aware of, and I'll be sharing out the K-8 special ed report with you in September. That's all about the special education review and the work that we've already started at the high school and one elementary school, and are looking at all aspects of special education based on the feedback that we got. So those are our proposed priorities, and we'll be writing action plans for each of those. The student well-being, this is really our holistic goal for our kids. Social emotional curricula, which is piggybacking on things we've already got in place with Open Circle, et cetera. Advisory and home-based, both other big structures to that. Opportunities for families and students to learn coping strategies, and that's, you'll see the word mindfulness is there. That's work that's already also been underway. Partnering with the community and families about the role of homework, and then the transition piece between schools, within schools, all aspects of that. So the leadership team's priority recommendations, we could have done all 4, but we elected to do the first 3 to continue because again, the seeds are already planted. We've just, through the Concord Ed Fund grant, refreshed all of the Open Circle materials and purchased more advisory curriculum for the middle and high school. Mindfulness is in the same place where we have mindfulness money from the Ed Fund to get further the systemic plan for that. And then the high school felt very strongly that the homework needs to stay as a front and center discussion because it's such at least as reported by the kids, it's their huge stressor. So we want to continue that discussion. We've made progress, but we have more to do. And then just quickly on inclusive culture, this is our diversity and culture competency. It was important to the special education community in town that they be considered part of this work as well.
Good idea.
And I thank CPAC and some of those really articulate folks who were so engaged in the process that they really kept that as part of the discussion. So this is the work again that we started the other day with shared understanding what diversity means. Expanding and ongoing professional development. I will add that a big part of this for me personally and my goals is the accommodation policy you all approved and executing that. So we included that in the documents the staff got the other day when Dr. Tatum was here, and I've already started to reference it. I'll be doing a more thorough job of that as the next 2 weeks roll out. And then those are the first 2 we feel are the priority work, and then it builds into curriculum, diverse staff, which we've made a little bit of progress on. And the last one is a step back and look at how we're placing our METCO population, especially at the elementary level, where right now all of them are going to Alcott. There was significant feedback in the strategic planning process that whether that at least needs to get looked at. The outcome maybe not be determined prior to, but the way that we're doing this right now, if at minimum needs more communication, if we feel that's the right way to go, or does it need a step back and a reconfiguration. And then finally, those of you who are around will remember this last objective initially was, we just needed a middle school, and consultant graciously helped us get a little broader bandwidth there. And what's so exciting, I think, the bandwidth we got is so in line with all the feedback we got on the campus advisory, and it's just about using our facilities in a way that's furthering instruction and education and maximizing opportunities. So the middle school is there, engagement for all kids, and that's, again, got some special ed components, making sure everything's accessible and engaged and available to them. And I tell you, this morning I was at Thoreau with that new program started, and I found those kids in the music classroom. I mean, how awesome was that? Anyway, it was awesome. And then secure environment, this is the safety strand, which we've got some ongoing discussions going already with the local officials and keeping that front and center in this day and age. And then the outdoor environments and space, which of those four, the leadership team was suggesting number one, obviously, and then focused on the outdoor space across all the schools for this coming year. So that's where we are. The goal here is that as the leadership team and I work together, they will bring these back. You'll remember they don't have improvement plans yet because we wanted this done first. They'll take the priority. Part of the action planning will be that they include it in their school improvement plans because very clearly each of these has a building-based component that's unique to how it plays out in the particular school, especially across the different levels. And, I floated this with the staff the other morning that, our perfect world would be that some of this would start to show up in the evaluation goals that the staff is writing and that they take on some of the personal way that impacts their world and really bring it to the kids. So there's a lot moving and it's really exciting.
It is.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's so tangible now. And such a reflective document of this community. I've said this a couple times to other colleagues that this is such a Concord plan. I mean, it's so personalized to this community and really reflects where we're at with the assumption that all the really great things stay in place while we enhance it. Yeah.
And one thing that perhaps doesn't come through in the black and white version of this is how participative this process was. There was quite a cast of characters from the district.
Let me just remind us all, and for those listening, so last January, actually late in the fall, we solicited folks who might be interested to be on this large stakeholder group that would be the leadership group of who would meet together, parents, staff, administrators, kids, outside community members, finance committee, town officials, Carlisle folks were here, Carlisle superintendent, and really a broad band. We were aiming for 35. We ended up with a committee of 50 that met 4 times and was incredibly effective. Lori, the consultant, really managed that number beautifully. And then as that group proceeded, we started with that great visioning activity of where we wanted to be in 5 years, and then that got replicated across almost 25 focus groups across both communities during the month of March last year, and engagement there was really amazing. Multiple people, dozens of people coming out at a time. We also surveyed all of the middle and high school students, and I think that was some of the best data we got as well. And then we brought it together and honed it in, and the themes just emerged. It was just fantastic. So the themes emerged, and that's how we got here. So it has been very inclusive. My biggest goal is to make sure it still feels inclusive, because once it's on paper, it can feel like it's all that can get lost, especially if you weren't in the room at the time. So I want to be sure that the action planning part is just as inclusive. I know when the large 50-member group broke, we had some comments that they'd be willing to come back. I would love some touch points along the way where they hear where we are and just sort of dialogue and a little bit of benchmarking. And part of the action plans will have some measurable benchmarks along the way as to, one of my favorite words Lori's given us is early signs of success. Like you can see a little bit of movement and know that you're getting things moving. And again, the final priority I have is this teaching staff, and I will continue to be very clear with them that they need to be part of how this happens. We're to the point where we know what we're aiming for, but how this happens has to be a dialogue. So lots of great things to come, but it has been inclusive and will stay inclusive. Yeah.
It's great.
All great.
So how will you update us on some of these action plans?
Right, so the early part of the fall, you're going to get some really concrete documents. You'll see action plans for the priority of initiatives, and you'll also see the school improvement plans come together. So that you'll remember the district goals we've been sharing out. I think those action plans will be reflective of include those goals and then how we're going to get there. And then you'll see the school improvement plans, and then we'll report back regularly through the year. Yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. That second meeting, I felt a little sick to my stomach. I was like, how do you take all of this?
All that data.
Like, this is so overwhelming, and then to see it having come this far, it's great.
That's great.
It is really Concord, I agree.
So
Concord-Carlsile.
pat yourselves on the back. We've been invited to present at the school committee conference because Lori's connected the Planning for Success model of the state, and through her, we've been invited to come tell the story and share the plans. So
It's great.
It feels good to her too, apparently.
It's fun to see you talk about it, you're so excited.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is the fruit of this is the work to come. It's just great work. This is how this district's going to become, take what's amazing and make it phenomenal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Great.
I have to say, having gone through the review of our goals and this, and reflecting back on what we accomplished last year as a school
No question.
community is pretty extraordinary.
It's pretty impressive.
I think everybody should feel really good about where we are and where we're headed.
And probably the feedback I would have, you did both. You did the cleanup that had to be done of some repairs of the negative stuff while you moved forward, which
too.
I think proved to be really phenomenal for those of us working on it, but that's kind of amazing. Like most places you can't do that. So.
And it makes both pieces better.
Yes, it
Do
did.
it coterminous.
One informed the other, there's no question.
Amazing.
And your engagement, I mean, I know you want to say I did all that. That's not true. How many of you were here at every strategic planning session, And Lori's like, I got to rotate them in. I'm like, So, your level of engagement on all these, whether it was the subcommittees or the strategic plan, I mean, you are just a very engaged committee, and that matters enormously. So,
Nice. Thank you.
thank you all.
I know.
Pleasure to
Walk on,
serve.
pat each other on the back. Come on.
I wasn't here.
I wasn't. It's okay. You're successful by association. All right.
Just call me Melissa.
Next, are we done with this?
For now.
Very good. The CCTV lease draft,
Yeah, I saw that.
do you have some comments
I
on it?
do.
I know
I do.
Court is on the...
Why don't you let Court go
committee
first, and then I have some others.
Okay.
Sure.
May I just do context?
Yes, please.
So
Please, yeah,
know what
no,
we're talking about?
We need it, yeah.
So up until now, and correct, those of you who are better versed in this, feel free to edit how I say it. The TV studio space at the high school has been run by CCTV, essentially tenants of the high school as a private entity. The town of Concord is replacing, is that the right word? CCTV?
Not renewing a contract.
There we go. Thank you.
Hence absorbing
There we
the
go.
responsibility within town
Yeah.
government.
So essentially, they will become the tenant of the TV, of the space, and they are now looking to, we need to put some documentation together as to what that agreement will look like. They are due to take over October 1st, so the timeline we are working on is a discussion tonight with a vote for September 25th, if we can get there. So tonight's a discussion.
And until then,
CCTV is actively operating now until the 1st of October.
CCTV is filming tonight. Sam
that's right.
is one of the staff members. We believe at least 2, if not all 3 of the staff who are expected to be with CCTV through the end of September will move over to some form of town employment and will be tested within hours with their requirement to get a special town meeting out live.
That's right. Oh, my God.
4 hours later, they'll be in Carlisle. But if it's
Back-to-back meetings.
But these personnel
Baptism
have
by
done this
fire.
before. Although their reporting lines will change, their abilities have been proven already, although none of these live town meetings are simple affairs for these folks.
so this is a brand new attempt to...
So this is brand new because CCTV was there based on a handshake, basically.
Right.
And an original contract between, first there's a contract between the PEG organization, in this case Comcast, that Concord has granted the license to, franchise license. And then after Concord and similarly Carlisle have an agreement with Comcast, they then turn around and extend an agreement to a provider organization who will then use these Comcast funds or some portion thereof to perform the services. So that's the way it has worked so far. In the original agreement, it was stated that if the PEG station, public education government access television, is in public space, there will be no rent. And so the organization landed in the high school because it had been in the high school, pre-Comcast, when other providers were offering up the service. But there was never a formal agreement. And the town, in its wisdom, said, well, if we're going to now be the occupants, let's get a piece of paper that has a clearer understanding of the respective roles and rights and responsibilities. So hence this document.
Right. And this draft was offered by the town, so rather than reinvent the wheel, we're starting with what they've provided, but this is, we are the landlords, so.
And what I want to propose is that with due acknowledgements to Carlin Reed, who's with us tonight and who is the chair of the Public Access Advisory Committee and also professionally exceedingly well versed in all of this stuff, to just note a few things. And these won't surprise Carlin, she pointed out most of these. So I want to take you through the document and point a few things out and then one by one revisit them as you wish. I think it's a decent process. In the first section, purpose, it refers to line 5, CCRSD and the town. And I would simply note that Carlisle has been a companion municipality in this, and so we've got to make sure that Carlisle is represented and protected, whether this is assurances that there's an intermunicipal agreement between Concord and Carlisle or something else in some way, shape, or form. I think it's contingent upon all parties to see it.
I know there's been some communication between the two town managers.
Yes.
I don't know beyond that, but we
So we'll just,
need to keep track of it.
I don't know who's seen this. This came from the assistant town manager for the town of Concord.
My understanding, I can't say if Tim Goddard has seen it, but he's had dialogue with Chris Whalen for sure. We need to probably have some firsthand conversation with. Yeah.
So we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And then the two more lines down, last sentence, the parties agreed that facility, probably it's the facility, will be used exclusively, ... And this is not language that will stand because it later refers to the agreement with Comcast. And Concord, by regulation is the correct word, Carlin, cannot restrict the potential for other providers or vendors to come in and serve the town. They can't say, we have one vendor, we're stopping here.
They have a non-exclusive franchise agreement.
So the technicality, but because of the reference to the word Comcast in there, we would say it needs to be cleaned up a little bit in accordance with the town's something, PEG goals or something. And again, we'll come back to that. Community access, the bold-faced employees of the studios will be required to comply with school requirements as to quarry fingerprints and student safety. I would note that we might want to think more deeply about this. The practice for many years when CCTV was there, although it's not currently in force, I regret to say, is that not only were the employees quarried, but every quote-unquote member of the nonprofit organization, i.e. anybody who used the studio or its services as a condition of membership, was quarried by the school. So just know that it has a separate entrance. It has a separate entrance for security reasons, but it's also got a door straight through into the school.
Well, and students use it.
And students use it, so it's a two-way door. So we've got to be mindful of that and be cautious. Page 2, second full paragraph, specialized groups requesting use of the shared studio space must be probably accompanied by.
Yeah.
I think
Yes,
would be
that's
the
a term.
intended word. Term, you all are more informed on this perhaps than me around use agreements, lease agreements, but perpetuity is not something that I'm comfortable with.
So I talked with Ropes and Gray this afternoon, and legally, it's a 25-year limit because of the background of interdisciplinary. There's a cap with a municipal interdisciplinary agreement that perpetuity is not one of the options. So we would have to cap that at 25.
And I don't think it does any party any good to never revisit this.
And of course, you can go less than 25.
Yeah. So those are the few that I pointed out. I might ask your indulgence and offer up the microphone to Carolyn if we might.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Through the chair.
before we do that?
Yeah, please.
So, I'm sorry, no, the specialized groups on the second page requesting use of the shared studio. Who is that?
That would be, for example, a Council on Aging group who says, we want to come into the studio. Or even a third party who says, I want to use your fee-based schedule to rent this for a shoot.
This would be someone that is not a student or
That is
a
correct.
town of Concord
Employee, in
employee, right?
Well, that's our assumption.
That's what I'm trying to
about the-
understand.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been part of a Girl Scout troop that went and did,
Concord
something.
can.
Right.
So we think that's,
Filmed something at
I think that's how they are.
So those would fall into this category?
Yes, exactly.
So Ropes and Gray recommended that we have approval rates on who those groups are since they're coming in our school space. So right now it reads that the town would have approval.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I don't
This
know
doesn't
the
say
logistics
approval,
of.
you're
That's
suggesting we
feedback
add
from
that.
them that has
Right.
not been language that hasn't been drafted yet.
So we may,
They're sending me a revised document first.
so we might want to have like a policy that says here are groups that
Yeah.
we approve, as opposed to like every time the
Yeah,
Girl
that's
Scouts want to
probably
go.
Right.
smarter.
They can't go until they talk to us.
Logistically, yes.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
Have a bunch of groups that
So
we
just to
approve
kind of
everything.
clarify who, if who's not special here, that's what I kind of didn't understand in there too.
So develop a list of
Okay.
those groups.
So is our takeaway from that we want, we're content with town staff member, but also our approval mechanism imposed in some way?
Yeah, so Ropes and Gray's gonna send me a draft
So it's a known,
sentence.
a group known to us
Yes.
prior?
And if it's not, we are part of the vetting.
Yeah, got it.
Private citizen?
Okay.
What about the studio access fees going all the way to the town?
Well, the town is funding the thing in its entirety, and the town will take on that obligation if franchise fees ever diminish. At least that's the town manager's long-range plan for this, is to protect this regardless of what happens with licensing fees, franchise fees.
Well, I know we don't pay, there's no rent paid, but this is part of a depreciating asset. And that is owned by the regional school district. And it strikes me as, maybe there's some, clearly there is an expense to the school district that is not compensated. Now, it could be we're using it, our students are using it, and that's fine, but I just don't.
Yeah, the schools are using it, we hope they double their use of it at the high school.
So Ropes and Gray
at-
recommended
at
that we
the middle
put that
school.
to paper to say that since we're not getting a financial, benefit of the agreement, that we get some language together, and he's gonna draft this as well. We would be collaborative and start to set some expectation of what we would hope for. I think, there's certainly intention that we would get more use out of the studio and be able to probably further embed it into some instructional things that right now it's a very ancillary use that's going on right now.
Incredible.
So I know that that's the town's intention, but I think to your point, that would solidify, you want to document what your outcome is here onto why this is beneficial to the school district.
And if ever the question comes up as to who has priority, I think that's something that might want to be addressed. And student use would be really...
Yeah, if the science class that does the weather show on Tuesdays has 10:30, is that protected for them? Is that-
Seems like there should be some joint scheduling.
Yeah.
Yep, we can talk on that too.
And Lori, what about individual community members who don't belong to a group?
Yeah, I don't know, do you know what the practice is on it?
Well, we know what the current practice is. What the town will do in its wisdom, we don't know. We don't even know the hours they'll operate. But we do know that the P and the E and the G are pretty specific. The public is public.
Yep.
And as soon as that's restricted, there would be, I think, hell to pay. So it will be protected in some reasonable way. Education is everything that comes out of any schools, and anything that comes out of public schools is the property of CPS or Carlisle or the regional school district. And the station only has rights to air it, doesn't own it. And government, of course, is all things government up through the federal level. So if the military sends us something, we have an obligation to air it, we air it, and it becomes part of the government repository.
Really?
There was one item that you didn't mention I wanted to highlight. Good coverage, yes, absolutely, all covered everything. The last piece was in paragraph number 5, just to highlight, and I'm very pleased to see, Dr. Hunter, that you already have legal counsel on this, working on it. That was a smart move. The last piece of talks about how often the amendments can be changed, only as part of the town-wide annual budgetary process. So think about how often that will occur and what it is, and it means that if you want to change this amendment, to modify it, with this language, it's a very strict window. So you might consider whether that ties your hands in doing any other kind of amendments going. That was the only thing I wanted to add.
I might add to that, I don't know what that means. Does that mean town meeting? Does that?
Yeah, I would say.
I don't even quite know what that means.
The 3 months?
Because one could argue the budgetary process is involved.
We were talking about it earlier.
Jared just gave you an 8-month plan.
Tell them to call us, we'll explain it.
1,000 level.
Something tells me to be coming home.
I also had an issue with the maintenance thing, because I don't really understand what that is, because the town's going to come up with an annual care and maintenance plan that includes trash
Well,
removal. They're going to remove the trash once a year?
Right now,
They're going to have a plan.
right now, the school doesn't provide those services.
Does not.
No, an outside vendor comes in off the CCTV budget, which comes from the 2 towns through Comcast monies, and pays an outside cleaning
To do
outfit.
the, I didn't realize, okay. So we want that.
And then
that-
just by way of
vendor
information, so that we'd want to look at that plan, certainly. Going back to the very first purpose, was it, let's see, no, community access. In consideration of the PEG funding which was provided in 2015, my understanding, my recollection is that because both the Community Education Office and the PEG Studios were not eligible for MSBA, the town of Concord, the selectmen specifically made a singular point of pulling another $100,000 out and making it available for the high school to offset those costs. Now, how $100,000 offset those costs, I'm not sure anybody quite knows, but it was at that point a reasonable estimate of what a worthy contribution would be to make it possible.
I had 2 other comments from council. Maybe one. making sure that there's a solid transition plan for the ownership of the equipment that's currently there. And maybe you can answer this, CCTV is
Oh,
walking.
boy, I can tell you that is
Okay.
pretty murky
That's
right
a
now,
big
as you well
Okay.
know, because the equipment, and thankfully it's not our problem, but it certainly is the town's issue, the two towns and their issue to deal with, and the corporation, which will have to get Attorney General approval on all of this. So it's nothing small and
It's not a yard sale.
Not a yard sale. But the current agreement with Concord reads to the effect that if CCTV winds up its business, all equipment goes to the town of Concord. And Carlisle knows this, and the select board know this over there, and with proper cross-town agreements, they're willing to accept that because Concord would take the responsibility but give Carlisle all the access they want, including some equipment that's in Carlisle already.
Okay.
So if the two of them agree and CCTV, the corporation, agrees, we think through our attorney we can get this to the AG without difficulty. So I'm not too concerned about that. The equipment.
So I think the council's advice was to not get in that.
You won't get in that.
That it's
Yeah,
clean.
You will not get in that. I will say the challenge might well be identifying exactly how to distribute back to the two towns the cash, and even if that's legal, because this is a charitable organization, we shouldn't be giving cash back to anybody. But that's, again, the corporation's issue with the state, nobody else's.
Okay. That's what we have here. We do have a draft coming from council to look at. We can incorporate some of the other feedback from tonight, and we'll have another draft.
And maybe a good end note is, let's use this very well for our students.
Absolutely.
To the extent
Yes,
it's an
please.
educational resource, let's
Yeah.
use it, and let's, to the extent the middle schools can benefit, let's see that it lands there in both districts, all three districts.
And we will communicate back with town hall.
So for process, you've got some edits from Peter?
I just shared all of them with you, though. Yeah.
So what, we'll get another agreement, our next meeting is
Another
what,
round?
the 20th?
September 25th.
So we have to approve it then?
It's okay.
I-
We've been operating under a de facto
Yeah, I mean,
agreement for.
if you're not ready, I think
But I'm not also comfortable to know that even Carlisle's weighed in on this contract.
Right, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
it'll
I
take
know
some
that you
time.
said you were going to talk
There's
to.
work to do. No,
Right.
there's definitely work to do. Both
So-
towns need to be involved in the conversation,
Right.
and Chris, they need to hear the edits, and Concord-Carlisle needs to hear what's drafted here,
And let's imagine there was no agreement even September 25th, it'd be on your authority that the town
Correct.
is in there,
correct.
or towns.
Makes you very powerful.
I guess.
That must be why she's here.
Some days it feels that way.
Right.
Other days, I don't know. Okay, so I think if we don't hit it, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
One quick question I had is it the final document going to be use agreement or a lease or?
Probably use it.
Okay, to be determined, that's fine.
You know, I didn't
just
hear any
want-
feedback about
Yeah.
what's here from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
legal counsel, but you can,
I don't know, I'm just,
Transfer.
At least definitely applies.
yeah.
I think Christine makes a good point, it's a use agreement, it's not a lease, it's not a
Right.
contract.
Yeah.
not a lease,
No
okay.
money.
So it is a
There's
use
no
agreement.
exchange
Kind of like
here.
community use agreement for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
intermunicipal,
Yeah.
interdepartmental.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done with that item. Next is the CCHS Campus Oversight Subcommittee update. And we had a meeting.
Yeah, it'd be helpful if you guys updated.
I was just going to say, you weren't at the last meeting, and, you know, what I recall distinctly is we had the fire chief visit and give us an update on the fire situation, and I have to admit, I was surprised, as many others, that we don't have smoke detectors in the classrooms, and I think this is something that, you know, this committee ought to look at, maybe starting at the campus committee, but, I mean, this is something I think that hopefully is not going to be very expensive, but should be taken care of as probably as soon as possible.
We don't have any information on cost.
And the reasoning was what? That
Not
22 minutes was lost before
Correct.
this thing triggered the sprinklers, but it would have triggered a smoke detector in a matter of
Seconds.
something.
So all this damage
And we might not have-
is
and
from the water.
right.
So
Right.
all
Damages the
exactly.
water, we could have avoided the water
Because
damage.
it wouldn't have changed anything about when the sprinklers went off, but it would have changed when the fire department was sending the truck.
He's fairly convinced the sprinkler never would have gone off, because they would have gotten there and put it out.
Got it,
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
Gallons of water.
they're 2 minutes from the high school.
Not as many.
It's like
And no
that.
water.
And just point of reference,
How would they put out the fire?
the Concord schools are not smoke detectored in the classrooms either, except for the middle school, because they don't have sprinklers, so,
But one of the middle schools doesn't even have walls.
yeah. well, that's-
Ceiling.
So just, it's not just a high school discussion in some
Right.
respects, or at least the Concord committee should
So-
remember that.
It's not, I'm assuming it's not a code violation.
It is not a
Or is
code
it?
violation.
No, it's all
So that I
code.
was just, so the insurance
That's
company
crazy.
can't say.
No, it's
"Please go
definitively
with smoke
not a code
detector."
violation.
Got it. I just
Can the
wanted to-
insurance company at one end require us, at the other encourage us?
Give us a
No.
discount if we do.
No, if it's not in the codes, there's
Yeah,
no
that's-
enforcement. It's a highly strong recommendation, obviously, from the fire department, and has been apparently for a while. So,
Well, as
I was
a
wondering-
scoping of the building, you know.
I think it's, I can only speak to what I've heard in the last month,
I
but
think it
it
was the
sounds like
preference
it
of
may
the
have
fire
come up.
department, but they are to code. They did it to the code, so they were in compliance.
I'm curious if our premium would go down if we had smoke detectors in the classrooms. Because I mean, clearly,
You know,
you don't think so?
I don't know.
Yeah. That's something
Yeah, it's a good
that we
question.
ought to
because-
check out.
Especially right
because-
now, because they would realize what they wouldn't have spent.
Totally.
But it's
Exactly.
right, the cost benefit to us, right?
So that was one of our discussions at the last meeting.
So, yeah, so go back to all the rest of the stuff.
Well, so we approved, you know, a RFP for to send out for the, I mean, I'm not gonna be as articulate as maybe Jared would be, but, because he drafted it, but to be sent out for the potential of a firm doing the design, and not the design, the engineering and design review of the campus. Because Jared's gotten a few bids, all in the ballpark of the 200, hoping that would be it, and want to queue it up so should it get approved at town meetings, we're ready to go, instead of waiting then to develop this.
Yeah, go further. Yeah, so
It's a very
the bid's
tight
out on the
timeline.
yeah, the bid is out on the street right now. We have gotten, I'd say, no less than 30 people soliciting.
Wow.
It's like every time I check my email. So we have a list going. Ian is sending them all out. It's got to be 30 at least, and counting. It's every time I look at my email.
Wow.
So the timeline is on 9/6 at 10:30. We're having a walkthrough. This is a mandatory walkthrough. So they have to come. We're going to be giving them a tour. We're going to be answering questions, and we'll obviously take attendance for them to bid on the project. They have to attend this. I'm just going to get my calendar out just so I can give you the proper timeline. The bid is going to close.
December 15th?
No,
No,
before that.
September.
September, yeah.
15th.
So the bids are gonna be coming in, I should have had my
It's before
schedule.
town meeting.
Well before town meeting. The bids are gonna come in the week of the 13th. I wanna say they're coming in the 12th, that is the deadline. On the 13th, Thursday the 13th, we have a committee of 3 of us, Ian, Brian, and I are gonna review the RFPs. And we're going to make a recommendation based on the process. And then we hope to bring that all to you right after that, make a recommendation.
And it's all contingent upon the approval of both town meetings.
And
Right.
That they all know that, so that they're, you know, if it doesn't get approved, then we're not obligated to hire them.
Town meetings in a ballot.
No ballot.
No ballot.
No, we're under
October
the
1st.
2.5. Something's no ballot.
So if it is approved, we do have tight timelines on when the financial piece is due and then when the full report is due. So in December, we're asking for the price proposal, and then by the end of January or mid-January, the report will be due.
So we structured it so the numbers that come in December can inform any more articles in order to meet the January dates for the capital articles to go in.
So one other thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, we had like 4 or 5, you know, people from various committees and departments in town. Delia Kay from the NRC. We had Marshall Rasmussen from the Planning Board. We had the building inspector, Lavonia.
Lori Lavoli.
Lavoli. And we had someone from the water department.
And the light plant.
And the police department.
And the blight plant. Oh my, so there were quite a few people.
Oh, at the meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
This
about
is the meeting
eight of them.
before that.
This is the one before that.
Yeah, I was going to say, not the police chief wasn't there
No,
last
but
week.
we sent an officer to the big
2
meeting.
meetings ago.
Yeah, 2 meetings ago, right?
So
I'm
that
talking
was
about
all
the
those
last
town
meeting.
people helped inform all the issues and concerns and all things on the campus.
That's
Well,
fabulous.
it was about opening it up to them and,
Right.
you know, what's on your list, and
So there
we're going
were,
to continue this dialogue.
And
yeah.
that's what I'm saying, Scott, if they could
Yeah.
start the dialogue there with the town, just puts us in so much of a better position versus responding
So
later.
what was kind of new though is that the young lady from the water department mentioned that there was increased mineralization at the Hugh Cargill well, which is the one right downstream from the high school on Walden Street. And so I'm interested to find out more about this, what that means, how much, and, you know, but they're testing and continuing to look at this. So, you know, who knows, that could affect some of our plans, and whatever, you know, we gotta obviously be careful with our water supply, you know, groundwater. And the other comment that was interesting to me, Marshall Rasmussen is obviously a highly regarded major employee of the town in terms of land planning and the planning board. And, you know, somehow we talked about potentially having a field house ice hockey rink at the high school, and she said, well, we got 42 acres at 2229 Main Street, which is the old Starman, which is now, EPA has done so much work there, it's now zoned residential. So in other words, there's no problem putting
No problem.
anything there. So 42 acres,
Yeah.
pretty interesting. Huh?
Nothing.
So anyways, just, I mean, you know, for her to make sort of unsolicited a comment like that, I mean, to me was kind of interesting.
Did you have Judith Niche engineering?
We did, I was just about to say that.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Niche Engineering came to give us another round of historic, I learn something every time we hear the stories, historic landscape of the campus and the way things operate currently and how they were built, and we asked a lot of questions and just continued to learn more. So that's always a valuable conversation to talk with folks who know that campus as well as they do and have been engaged in some of these other conversations, the impervious and pervious surfaces and the watershed and all of those kinds of things. So I think we benefited from that discussion too.
Any chance I can get a draft of those minutes before?
Yeah, I'll find,
Is that
yes.
gonna be, just realized that,
It's coming up very soon.
because tomorrow's not a school day, right?
Some of Ripley's working on some of it.
Do you want to talk about Carlisle Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, I
visit?
think we should, for a minute anyway. Oh, you want me to do that?
Please.
Okay. We were at the Carlisle Board of Selectmen meeting Monday night to present and talk on the warrant articles. Mary and Jared, Bob, you interrupt at any point. Don't let me editorialize too much. I feel like the first article with just the capital list of projects is pretty straightforward and simple. I think that was comprehended and understood. Much more complicated conversation with the $200,000 feasibility work. Asking a lot of questions, especially on the campus advisory potential list of projects, and spending money on things that maybe aren't going to happen, and how would those be funded, and just a lot of concern, I think, frankly, on some of the potential for not doing those projects. I tried to explain that we can't even know if they're viable projects without the complexity of this study. But it was definitely a conversation that means we have work to do in the communication of what we're doing here. Some of their feedback, and given the pace at which all of this has happened, it was unfortunately not feedback we could consider, was to split the article up and get the must-dos on one article and the wish-to-dos on another. Anyway, it's too late for that right this minute. That might be future discussions. I don't know if you want to add. Or, it was a
the only thing I'll add.
It was a great bunch of feedback, so we know what's.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think they were good questions, and
They
they're going to
were.
come up at town meeting, so we
Yeah,
might as well know
yeah.
them now. I think that some of the context for those questions was, Carlisle's talked about building a senior center in town,
Yeah.
and there's this sense that, well, if you authorize the design funds, then there's this momentum to actually build a facility, and if you don't have the money for that, then
Right.
why invest the design fund? So that failed at our last town meeting. So that's sort of this looks like another one of those projects. If you go for a design, now you've got momentum to actually build a building, or
The other thing
whatever
I
it is.
reflected a lot on, it's not that I was unaware, it just felt so tangible in the room. The Concord community is very versed in a lot of the water discussions and very knowledgeable about why this is so complicated. And I do think, well, Carlisle has some knowledge of that, but it's not an ongoing conversation in the same way.
We have a lot of water quality issues in town
Yeah, so-
that we discuss, but
Yeah.
not specific to the high school.
Sure,
I mean,
right,
it's-
exactly,
right.
exactly.
So people are well versed in those issues.
Yeah, so trying to explain the complexity
They have
of.
visibility to our issues.
Right.
to
Yes,
to
right,
understand
exactly, exactly. And how complex it is to do anything on that campus is hard to articulate. I was trying.
I mean, I think that was the most important point
Yeah.
of the meeting that Lori just described. I just could sense that those four individuals, and the chair of that committee wasn't there that evening, so it was 3 or 4 of them. But they just, didn't have any kind of early participation in all these discussions that, Joanna and I have had, and others, and the level of knowledge as to how complicated that campus is, that it's in the groundwater conservancy district, and that anything we change in pervious acreage is going to have to go through 3 committees and all the rest of it. And to do that piecemeal, and to have one, and not have it all sort of, encompassed in one study would be much more expensive.
Right.
And
And yet, it's a good reminder to all of us, we now all kind of know that and get it.
See, that's
But for
the
anybody
point.
who hasn't
Yeah.
been involved in all these and all of our
Yeah.
And I
discussions,
think that's what I took away.
it's,
like,
it
oh, we
needs
gotta
a lot of
back- you gotta
education
back it
because
up.
it's not.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's not a
Back it up,
given.
yeah.
I will say that the gratitude is enormous that we are even having the conversations that we're
Right.
having. I mean, Carlisle's response has been nothing short of outstanding and collaborative. So to that end, it was really positive. But they were good questions. They were questions for us to take
Well, it's a
back.
good reminder, we have to be able to
Yes.
articulate what is very complicated in a pretty concise,
Right.
it's challenging, right? In a concise way to get at how many factors are such that we need professional help in the engineering and calculations and et cetera.
And how critical that
Yeah,
is.
Yeah.
yeah, we're stuck until we do.
So I think there was only one other article on the warrant. which is a request for design funds.
Oh, is it?
I'm just saying.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
I didn't stay for the rest of the
Okay.
meeting, but I think that's the only thing that's.
All right.
We have
See the paper
14
this
or
week.
something.
Yeah, 13, 14.
We've that many?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It doesn't sound that special anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I doubt it.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere you refer to the fall town meeting.
Yeah,
Fall,
exactly.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done with this.
Yeah.
Done with this item. Okay. So now we can go to action items, and we have a few votes to take here. So,
Here, I'd move that the Concord-Carlisle School Committee vote to accept a donation from the Alfaba Fund, a donor-advised fund of the Boston Foundation, in the amount of $7,500, $5,000 to the Alternative Program, and $2,500 to Rivers and Revolutions Program.
Second.
any discussion?
Yeah, I had the gift of engaging with the donor, and this is just appreciation for what the high school's done
Wow.
for a student, and
Wow, that's awesome.
I don't, it doesn't get better than that, yeah.
That's terrific.
That is
What is the
true.
alternative?
It's for our most needy, substantially needy kids, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow.
With great gratitude.
Yeah,
Great
excellent.
gratitude.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
And then I would move that the Concord-Carlisle School Committee vote to transfer scholarship funds received from the Acton Toyota in the amount of $5,000 to be awarded to a recent CCHS grad.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, we need to explain this one to you, so Jared's gonna do that.
So we've been going back and forth with Toyota, who gave the scholarship. So it's a little different than normal. They're sending us the funds, and we are then paying the school with these funds. So it's not going to the student. So again, Toyota's giving us the $5,000. We're putting in a revolving money in, money out, and we're sending the money right to Dartmouth.
This got more complicated than we would have intended, and we're not necessarily looking to manage it this way again, but we also didn't want to be the prohibiting factor to this young lady getting her funds. So there's a lot to talk on here, and probably we need to follow up with the powers involved in this to say that's not necessarily comfortable that we're the cash flow.
So I'm sorry, you're sending it to Dartmouth, you said?
Yes.
Right to this college? Okay, I did, okay.
And that's at the request of the family. It could have been issued right to the student, but they've said to send it to the college, so. It's an odd one, and apparently it started back in June before John left, and we just got in the mode of needing to finish it. So this isn't necessarily something we're comfortable with, but we also want this young lady to get the money shared, so we're gonna ask that you approve the transfer and finish it, and then look to talk with the Toyota folks. It's corporate Toyota, it's not Acton, they've been great. Corporates put parameters on how they want this.
How they can,
and
and I assume this is a one-time scholarship, so this is
It
not
is.
repeating.
It is.
It is, but they have a history of
Yes.
similar scholarship
Yes.
amounts, similar scholarship
So-
awards for some years now.
Yeah. So it's great for we don't want to in any way restrict what's going on for this young lady who obviously has done very well and earned a really great scholarship.
Right.
We also don't want to be the vehicle here, so
Yeah,
we need to
sure.
finish it now, but not
Yep.
engage in this again, so.
Makes sense to do it for now.
So could I have a motion to?
I already, I moved that one.
Yeah, I
moved
moved it
and
and seconded.
Mary seconded. We're ready to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So now can I have a motion to implement the electronic warrant process?
I would move for both committees, thank you, that we implement the electronic warrant process.
Second?
For both?
Both.
Any discussion?
Let's see.
Do you wanna-
Anything you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, please.
So the directions are in your packet. It was originally 4 pages. We cut it down to 1. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to invite you. You can get 2 emails. It's going to be through a Google Drive share file where it's going to contain the weekly warrants, and it's going to be reviewed and signed by myself, or if I'm not in, by a designee.
If you're a member of both the CPS and CCRSD school committees, you're going to receive, that's when you're going to get 2 emails. So we're going to ask you that you review the signed warrants. Each warrant is going to have a 4-digit account number that you'll see on there. It's the warrant number. And then, so make note of that. We ask that you review the warrants by before the end of day Wednesday. The district payroll is Thursday, so payroll has to be approved before 11:59 on the day of the payroll. We can't hold that up. We can hold up accounts payable warrants, but payroll is the one that we really need you to take a look at. And we'll get it to you within, hopefully it'll give you 48 hours of notice on that. Some weeks we will not have AP warrants or payroll warrants, but every other week you will have a payroll warrant. So make sure you receive that and come knocking on the email door and everything if you don't get that. So after you get the first email with the Google Drive, you're going to get a second email, which is a Google survey. It's going to be very simple. Basically, you're going to get the survey. You're going to put your name in, the warrant numbers, and then submit. And it's going to timestamp it. And then we can attach it to the warrants. We still have to get a signature on these, but that way you don't have to come in and, especially during the summer, and sign. And the auditors will be fine with this.
Nice job, Jerry.
So if you get the majority, let's say 5 of us sign electronically and those 5 people are not all at the following meeting for a physical signature, does that
That's
matter?
absolutely not. But I thought correct me if I'm wrong, that we were going to have members of the budget committee, budget subcommittee, plus 1 more, be regular signers, and then have 3 people on standby. But everyone will have access to look at them, but those 4 people will be the designees for it. So
Is that what we did?
We talked about it at
We
least,
talked
and then we
about it.
talked about it.
I don't know if we've
So,
settled on it.
Yeah.
I don't know that
Yeah,
we
So
talked
there's
about
4 that you know you need to get. Is what you're saying?
There's 4.
4
For the region.
4
For the
specific
region.
people.
And so that subcommittee 4 would be Wally, Heather, and Bob, and then you need a 4th,
Yeah.
which sounds like it has to be Carlisle.
But you
Wait,
need one
no,
of
No,
them.
it's-
Christine.
It says
Heather and
Christine
I.
is
No.
on the
Christine,
Christine,
yeah.
Wally, Christine, and I
Yeah.
Yeah.
are on the budget subcommittee.
Oh, okay.
And so the 4th can be either,
You
can be,
Yeah.
Because it's one.
Just one, right? So
It's
you
one
just
from
need
each that's
And
required.
you
the,
designate
the
someone
4
else?
is not that only
Or
those
after the vote?
people can sign, it was more a
Right.
process thing for us so that we would
That
know.
we sort of
Right,
guaranteed
so
to
that,
have.
right, so that we know who's
Yeah, yeah,
gonna
yeah.
sign, and we're not all
Job.
saying, who's gonna do it?
No,
that,
that's
and,
fine.
we, the 3 of them, the 4 of us are responsible to do it.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to be the 4th if it's helpful. I mean,
terrific, that'd be.
Well, I guess, like, this is stupid, like, I won't be able to tell if Christine has signed, so I should just, if I get these, I should sign, right?
Yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean,
Right.
you can't
Well,
have
what
too
I would-
many signatures.
True. What I would do though is I would track down the designee.
So with the 4, if you can't find Christine, then you're gonna say to Mary, I can't find Christine, can you sign this?
Or if one of us can't get to it.
I'd rather just sign
Think
it,
of it,
because I don't, you know, because if you can't, I'm harder to track down than she is probably.
I don't have a life, so I'm easy to find.
That's fine. I mean,
So
you can
a
find
fail-safe in
sign.
the form of an extra signature.
As long as there's electricity over there.
I'll just make a practice of
good.
signing it
Yeah.
and
Then we just
Never
want
know,
Christine
Wally,
says
never
that's great.
know.
Yeah.
Could be my street.
It's a wild town.
Alright,
Okay.
cool.
Thank you so much, Jerry. This is wonderful.
But I will say,
Yes,
that's a
thank
whole
you for
lot
doing
less
that.
ice cream delivered to Berkeley.
There you go.
Oh, now wait a minute, we didn't talk about that.
Now, that's good that expectation's gone. See, that's not
Yeah. Take it back.
Yeah.
You see my office?
Carlisle still has to come in and sign.
Yes. It's only for CPS.
All right,
All right, all those in favor?
for both?
For
Oh.
both, correct.
Aye.
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 For both.
Thank you.
For both.
Sorry, that was awkward. All right,
And
all right, now go on.
really.
Jared, you're automating everything.
Oh, sorry. And then I move
Right.
Come on, Heather.
that we implement a procurement card program. It says procurement.
P-card procurement.
Is that correct? Is that word correct?
Actually, no, go to the second page where
Yeah, there's a
you get
pretty,
an agreement with the
you gotta
Bank of
reference the
Montreal.
memo.
Oh, sorry.
So you
Okay.
get
Eric,
Oh, here it is. Okay, got it.
break. I'll read it.
Oh, wow.
You can just reference it, you don't need to.
Whereas the,
read it.
good,
But wait a minute, isn't it
Your
both?
turn.
whereas the Concord-Carlisle
Yeah.
Regional School District has the authority to enter into an agreement with the Bank of Montreal for purchasing cards, now therefore be resolved by the Concord-Carlisle School Committee, Jared Stanton, Director of Finance and Operations, Chief Procurement Officer of the district, is authorized to enter into an agreement with the Bank of Montreal to secure procurement cards for any employee of the district under such terms and conditions as approved by the school committee. The school committee authorizes the Director of Finance and Operations to execute a P-card program agreement on its behalf.
I'm going to suggest you amend that to include Concord.
Both, yeah.
To include, oh, okay.
The Concord's
And-
Or,
So I would
or it
make
could be a
it-
separate vote, whatever's easier.
I would make an amendment that we insert Concord, after whereas we insert Concord and
Yeah.
in the second paragraph, where it says by the Concord, we insert Concord and after by.
And make committees plural
Yep.
in the last two lines.
Do we vote on the amendment first?
Yeah, we do.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment?
Do you want to tell them what this
Yeah,
means?
so I'll explain this a little bit. So the reason why maybe Concord was missed is 95% of
Yeah.
the purchases on the P card will be for Concord-Carlisle, such as field trips, Q5. Right now, Amazon only takes credit card. It does go through our purchase order system, but right now it only takes credit card. So for Concord's purposes, it would be used on Amazon. So there's many good, quick things. There's many good things about this P card. Number one, there's no startup fee, and there's no fee for this. By law, P card transactions must be included on the school committee warrants. So you'll see these, everything on there, what goes through the activity. So, for example, the way that it works is we have total control. So say we have a credit line of $50,000. We would put, if somebody, a principal or an administrator needed to use the P card, they need to go to Home Depot, and they're going to go on Tuesday, the 5th. We would give them the card. We put okay, Home Depot only, 200, and it expires at midnight on the 5th. Or if they wanted to go to a restaurant, again, Tuesday the 5th, expired at 11:59, it would only be allowed for those purposes. So that we have total control of what is spent on these.
Does it help mostly on the processing end for you, or is the bigger advantage that you don't have to reject reimbursement requests?
Yeah, can I say that?
Please.
This conversation was my first comment of how Q5 functioned last June, and we were reimbursing, we didn't frankly have enough handle on the monies that
Yeah.
people were putting on their own cards and charging off, and some Amazon going on it. Because it was the first time, people were needing stuff really quickly because they were going to start a new course, and I kind of looked at Jared and said, we need a better plan, and he goes, oh, there's a process that we can use. So it's meant to be all of that, Court, because all of it needs to get tidied up, and I think in one fell step we're going to be able to do that, both with the pre-approvals now tighter. We'll know how much they've contain, how much they can use it for, and then the processing in the business office is much, much, much simpler.
And if I'm the holder of a $200 dated card, what's the nature of the communication whereby I know that?
Well, really, it would only be administrators that would use it, or possibly principals. So I'd have direct conversation. They would have
Okay.
approval. I have a new approval process that involves a written email from me for if you want to get reimbursed, you have to get my permission on email, take a screenshot and put it into an attachment. So it would be similar, but I would have constant conversation with the card holders. And we would keep them.
No ambiguity whatsoever. Got it, okay. Thank
And
you.
so everybody has a card and you're essentially turning them on and off.
I'm sorry?
So I would already have a card, you'd turn it on and off as I needed it. Great.
Well, we would only have between 3 and 5 in the entire
Okay.
district, so not everyone is getting them. It's going to be very strict.
Good.
So how does that solve the Q5 issue? Were these individual
Oh, there's a much more to
teachers that
solve with the
applying?
Q5 issue. We need to be more pre-planned so that we can order things through the traditional process and we're not getting as much at the last
And
minute.
hopefully we
This
can
will
do that
solve
next
whatever's still in the very late last minute, but we're gonna start debriefing next week on how to get the rest of that, so we're not in that same situation. It's startup
Yeah.
things.
You mentioned in the first paragraph here, overseas trips, field trips, and other issues that require point of sale payment. That's not necessarily, that's unlikely to be an administrator. So that at that point, whoever the faculty member is
So
going to
we
have
would
to call.
designate, so it'll go through the administrator, he would give it to the chair. So it would be strict communication through the principal to the person for that day using the card.
Okay, so the principals are responsible
Right.
for disseminating them to where they need to be in the building.
But for the most part, we just, these are really for emergency situations. We hope, even field trips, most of this stuff should be planned well ahead of time. And this is really for emergency situations. Overseas trips, stuff like that if you need it, but.
Sorry to get into the weeds, but is it easy to avoid the unnecessary sales tax? Administrators carrying one of these? Because that's a problem for you too, is they'll request reimbursement for sales tax and you'll refuse them.
Yeah, we can't
Right.
do that.
That's a great question. I assume so. I don't have the answers to that right now, but I'll figure out.
Just
Right.
worth looking into,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Just today, don't they carry the tax
Yeah,
ID
they have
number?
the
Yeah,
number,
Like
they wouldn't
you
be
get yours
charged.
in your own credit card.
So
would
it might
be
be, we
different?
need to get ahead of it.
Yeah, we would need to get ahead.
They can carry a Xerox copy of your cert,
Yeah.
and maybe it's accepted by the vendor, and maybe it's not,
Yeah.
and so on.
Right.
It depends on the vendor.
Yeah.
But it's a problem you don't want, is
Yeah, it's a
the
good
point of
question.
getting at. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seemed to be something the vendor of the P card should have as
Something on
a
that
feature
instead of
of the, because they've got all the information.
Right, because this is through MASBO, they adopted, so something's gotta be.
They've got to be
built
ahead of
in
this, yeah.
I would-
That
I
we
would
wouldn't
hope
pay
so.
sales tax anyway. But that's a great question, I'll give you the answer to that.
Okay, so we need to vote on the original motion as amended?
First,
I think we're still at amendment, it's been seconded.
I thought we voted
So we
on
just
that.
need to vote the amended language first.
Okay,
That's what we moved.
You had it moved and you had a second.
okay, all those in favor for both?
Aye.
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 So now going back to the original motion, as amended, for both, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next,
Is
that
Mary
right?
Christine didn't vote. They can't do
We
it for both.
voted something as amended. Whatever.
First vote was the amending the
Goes
language
to
of the motion.
Then we voted on.
And then we
And then we
voted on
voted
both
the motion.
motions, not both school
Okay.
districts.
Amended
Let's
as
go.
read by
Let's go.
Wally.
It's my turn.
Yep.
I think we're okay.
so now.
Mary, we've only been here 4.5 hours, come on.
No, when
All right,
Mary wants
Zach,
us to
come
look
on.
at something.
Oh, we're to the school committee again.
Move to.
Council.
You do have a
So,
motion?
I don't
well,
know,
I'll make
the link, so.
a motion and then do you want to confirm whether everybody wants to
We'll
vote? But
discuss it, yeah.
I would, are we moving to recommend, or are we moving to hire or accept?
Retain.
What's the terminology we need here?
You are voting, I would go appoint,
Move to
something
appoint.
strong.
Then
Yep.
I would move to appoint Murphy, Lemaire, and Murphy as our new legal counsel per the terms of their proposal for both districts. Does that
Beginning.
cover it?
Second.
Oh, we don't have a start date.
We don't have a start date, so. Is that enough
Okay,
detail?
And do we
We got a second, any discussion?
Do we have to like authorize you to enter into an agreement with them or anything?
So there typically isn't an agreement with attorneys. You
Fine.
They don't want to be.
handshake of.
Just start calling
You see
them
those
and
things all the
start
time, you're not signing one of those.
Okay,
It's a commitment.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I want to say thank you for all that work
Yes.
and
Yeah.
really
Wally.
well done process, it
Heather,
seems, and
definitely.
I can tell you guys
That's
are
great.
Interesting processes.
that you're really good.
Well, the good thing is we don't have a contract, so we can always.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the one thing I would ask, and I've already spoken to Heather and Wally a little bit about this, and Wally's offered to do this, I would like to see the communication with Peter Ebb be very personal, and I think that is probably one of you and not me. Wally's offered to be the phone call, and it's obviously a call full of gratitude and thanks, and my call's going to be more businesslike. So
Great.
I'd like to acknowledge that we would
Yes,
like
how
to make
long
this
is-
sensitively.
I'm sorry. How long has he been with,
25 years?
Oh,
Thanks, Wally.
worth noting?
Oh, absolutely, no question,
Worth noting.
no question. So it's I think we need
It's a
to be
big
appreciative and
Can you
sensitive.
let me know when
on
you've dealt
this.
with
He's a
it?
big
I wouldn't
one.
mind reaching out to myself.
I will.
He's done some good work.
I'll let him know. If there's, I think we can do this. If there's anything specific that you would like me to refer to, send just me and maybe CC Lori an email. But we developed a pretty good rapport during the CCTA negotiations.
Yeah.
I mean, I suspect he is anticipating the call.
I've talked to him a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye for both?
Aye for both.
For both, okay.
Should we?
And,
I've never gotten that
I don't-
habit, but we probably should do them separately.
Yeah, it probably should be a separate vote with Joanna calling the vote for
Yeah,
Concord.
because when you say all those in favor for both, and you two are saying aye, they're not for both, I mean, technically.
Good, let's
Well,
work
that's
that.
true.
Let's
That's
do
fine.
it
Good
correctly,
clean
sure.
habits.
Okay.
So really all the region, right?
You're making the motion for both, but
We made a motion for both, but if you want to do an all in favor for the region, and then Joanna can do it for Concord, let's do it
okay,
separately.
let's do that one.
We
All
usually do.
those in favor for the region?
Aye. And all those in favor for Concord.
Aye.
All right. That was great.
Perfect.
And next, we
Now we're
schedule a vote.
on Senator Warren's request.
So my first question is if you've seen the email from Peter Ebb as of this afternoon?
Yes.
It's going to highly impact the discussions. If you
I
haven't,
have-
let's,
Is it a second
Can I
email?
see it?
Can I
Can I see it?
suggest?
Lori.
Can I
I
suggest?
forwarded it to you all, so let's get every, 1:50 this afternoon, we got it
Yeah.
minutes before that.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, let's be sure everybody gets a chance.
This is today's.
But if,
I mean-
if somebody wants to move it, they should
Scroll down.
move it.
No, I have not, I'm gonna suggest we
You
not
need
do
to read
that.
it. So I would suggest take a minute of real reading, because there's information I think you need to have.
Okay, and then I was going to repeat a couple of sentences that are critical
Okay.
and make one last comment, and then we can, So please read, let me know when you
Yes,
finish
Lori
reading.
forwarded it to us. There's a little more here. Okay.
know what sentence you just read.
I know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like, do I have to keep reading?
Probably not. I have it.
Oh, no, that wasn't it. I just got to the OGs.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm easily impressed, look.
Probably meant for a short discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you finished? You done?
it's
Yeah,
okay.
okay. So I just wanted to read a couple of sentences that I think are key under school committee policies. School committee policy KHE, however, seems clearly to be an impediment to the intended use of the gymnasium by the senator. Policy KHE provides that, in quotation marks, even the occasional or minor use of any public resources for political purposes is prohibited. So he's clearly telling us that this is a policy we obviously have to uphold, and it would preclude us from renting out the gymnasium to a political activity of any candidate.
Unless we modify our policy.
Unless, and that's at the end of the paragraph, unless we were to modify our policy KHE, which obviously it would take.
So this is what I raised on Monday morning, this policy,
Yep.
and here we are.
Seems to me this makes it a pretty clear answer.
Yep.
Anybody want to move that we,
I'll make a motion
I would-
that we...
can we not move this?
Well, we can make a motion and
Of course.
vote it down. Basically, right? Do you want to do it that way? or-
How's the best way?
Otherwise, we wouldn't
Yeah,
do
we
it
have-
again, right?
Or we could move
Nobody
to
makes a
deny the
motion,
request.
I think we have to do something.
I would,
I think I have the power to deny the request,
Oh,
but
okay.
I think
We
you
have to
need to
approve
decide
it.
how definitive you want to be. I don't think there's any harm in a motion.
Yeah. I think we should.
I'd like to move that we ask Superintendent, Dr. Hunter, to deny the request of Senator Warren's office to use the CCHS gymnasium for a rally, based on
Pursuant
policy.
to policy KHE.
based on our policy KHE, which prohibits the use of our spaces for any political activity.
Second.
Any discussion?
It is through campaign office that's asking this. So I would like to, I'd make an amendment to the motion that we deny Senator Warren's campaign committee's request.
That's more accurate.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, from the region, of course? Aye.
On the amendment.
That's right. And now on the main motion as amended, can I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
You know, every day I think about the facility we have. I think about, what we can, do with it. And it's unfortunate. I understand where we are. And I don't think we should change policy for this.
Yep.
But it seems like it will be a great use for the facility, but it is what it is.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that if there's enough support on the committee for the policy subcommittee to look at this as a potential way to change or amend or whatever the policy KHE, then we could express ourselves in that direction. So,
But basically for future reference. use,
oh,
not for
absolutely,
this one,
just for
right?
future. Is there consensus for that?
So-
For the policy
so
committee to look at
given
this?
our- Given our.
Yeah, I would stay on the vote before you get too far
I know,
down
I was
this
like,
policy
we have to-
discussion.
yeah.
I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt
good
you.
point.
You want to do the vote first?
I think you need to
Yes.
finish
All
this
those in
decision,
favor?
and then you can.
For the region, aye.
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 only for the region anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
But Bob, to your point, anything we've learned about any policy implications or interpretations get revisited by that subcommittee? As
So,
perhaps being one of them.
based on our conversation on Monday morning, I can't even imagine how we would set a policy that we could get on board with. It feels like a slippery slope, and I came away, before I even saw Peter Ebb's email, I started thinking, what's in it for us? You know, like why would we
Well,
necessarily want to grant these campaign rallies?
And that,
It just feels,
to your
like-
point, a policy review could tighten something up rather than make it more permissive. I don't think there's
Yeah.
an implication which way anything would go, rather just an
It's-
objective look on the facts.
it looks pretty tough. How would you tighten it up? Not to be argumentative, but you know, reading it and what Peter Ebb had to say, like, is it?
Well, I'm fearful of saying too much because I haven't studied the policy in detail, but I would say by some definitions, town meeting is a political event, but also distinguished hugely from a campaign office's rally. So we could parse words here if we wanted to help people in the future who were seeking
So could I just
use of schools.
respectfully suggest that we, since we've been here 4 hours, that we don't delve into this anymore, and if
Yeah.
the policy subcommittee wants to relook at it, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't want to be here unnecessarily any longer for something I'm not prepared
I agree, yeah,
for.
I think this should be discussed
That's
another
all.
time.
sounds good. I appreciate that. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
No, we need
No,
more
we-
votes.
One more?
Appointed.
Oh,
That's right.
Heather. Sorry about that.
That's quite all
Can I have
right.
a motion?
I would move that we appoint Heather Bout as chair of the budget subcommittee.
Second.
Finally, my life's
You're gonna wait
goal.
for me to get it out.
What I've been dreaming of is why I'm here.
So I guess do one for the, yeah, so is that move for both?
Yes, both, for both.
And some
Somebody
controversy
has to second
second?
it for Concord.
Second for.
What's already been seconded for, you seconded it?
All those in favor for both?
No, in favor for the, you're doing in favor for the
For the
region.
region.
We don't vote for
Region,
both.
okay.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor for Concord?
Aye.
Now,
And I
motion
move to
adjourn.
adjourn.
All those
Yes,
in
Heather,
favor?
thank you.
Second
Thank you all for staying.
All those in favor for
Isn't-
Concord?
Did we get a second
Aye.
vote?
We did.
I don't think you have to vote a motion to adjourn.
Oh, you done?
I think a motion to adjourn is, you're done.
Really?